There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News on your TV and your digital radio. I'm Miriam Cates, and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Joining me for the next 3 hours are the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib, and journalist Benjamin Butterworth. Well, it's officially the hottest day of the year as experts warn of a net zero meltdown with electric cars and solar panels at risk of explosion. So is it finally time to accept the government's green policies are nothing but hot air? And the Home Secretary plans to ban the Palestine Action Group, branding it a terrorist organisation. But don't they have a right to peaceful protest, or is throwing paint on our planes a step too far? MPs back legalising assisted dying in a historic vote in Parliament. I'll be joined by disability campaigner George Fielding, who's calling the bill state-sanctioned suicide. And every baby will have their DNA mapped under an NHS revolution to predict and prevent disease. A good idea? Or could it be a little sinister? Well, before we get started, let's get the news with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 3. Well, the top story this hour, Israel has launched yet another wave of strikes deep inside Iran, killing a top commander and exposing cracks in the country's intelligence network. Iran's foreign minister is warning United States involvement would be very, very dangerous. But Donald Trump says he's not ready to tell Israel to back off at this stage. Tehran is now refusing talks until the bombing stops, while claiming its nuclear programme is entirely peaceful. The UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the crisis is deadly serious and warns diplomacy must win over escalation. Well, last night, Donald Trump addressed reporters in New Jersey and had this to say.
The material that they've gathered already, it's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen.
The Home Secretary is set to brand Palestine Action, a terrorist group, calling their methods criminal and extreme. It comes after activists from the group broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint into the engine of a military jet. Counter-terror police are now on the case. The group's been behind a wave of stunts targeting London offices and even defacing Donald Trump's golf course in Scotland. They say they're exposing what they call blood-soaked ties between Britain and Israel's arms trade. More than 400 migrants have made the dangerous Channel crossing just yesterday, despite France claiming it's stepping up the fight to stop them. The Home Office says 437 people arrived in just 7 boats, with crossings now 42% higher than this time last year. New powers let French police intercept boats now just 300 metres from shore. One group was forced to disembark this morning before officers slashed their vessel to stop another launch. Dame Esther Ranson is urging the House of Lords not to block new assisted dying laws in England and Wales. That's after MPs backed the bill yesterday by just 23 votes. It would allow terminally ill adults with under 6 months to live to end their lives with medical help. Opponents say it's being rushed through without enough safeguards. But Dame Esther's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, told us the process has been careful and considered.
It is a gold star of assisted dying laws. In fact, in the case of it having so many safeguards within it, it's actually incredibly difficult to access it. And it brings in criminal prosecutions of up to life imprisonment for anybody that has been found guilty of coercion. That doesn't exist now. It's a brilliantly safe law that has been talked about for so long. It has not been rushed through. There's no such thing as a perfect law. We all know that. But this is pretty close.
Brought back to the surface 10 months after sinking off the Sicilian coast, Mike Lynch's super yacht has now been salvaged after the accident last August that killed the British tech tycoon, his teenage daughter and 5 others. A report found the vessel likely capsized in powerful winds during a sudden storm. Crews used one of Europe's biggest maritime cranes to lift the 56-metre yacht from the seabed. It revealed extensive damage to the hull and superstructure. Summer is certainly turning up the heat, with 33.2 degrees now recorded in Surrey today. That does, of course, make it the hottest day of the year so far. Temperatures could climb even higher tomorrow, with forecasters warning we might just hit 34 degrees, making it the hottest June day in 6 years. But it's not all sunshine. A yellow thunderstorm warning is in place for parts of northern England and Wales, with flash floods possible. There's also an amber heat health alert remaining in force as health services are bracing for a sweltering weekend. And as the sun rose over Stonehenge this morning, record-breaking crowds welcome the summer solstice, the longest and now the hottest day of the year so far. And just before I hand you back to Miriam, a breaking line we're hearing out of Brazil. We are hoping to get footage verified for you in the next half hour or so. But the latest line is that at least 8 people have sadly died after a hot air balloon dramatically crashed in the country, according to the governor of Santa Catarina state, so far confirming 8 deaths. 2 survivors rescued, but there were believed to be around 22 possibly people on board that hot air balloon. Rescue workers on the scene. As I say, we will get footage to you as soon as we have verified it coming into us from social media. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back. I'm Miriam Cates. You're watching GB News. And let's start with some of that breaking news. It is officially the hottest day of the year. And Britain is sweating as temperatures soar into the 30s. Well, Ed Miliband has been warned that the heatwave will trigger a net zero meltdown because apparently heat pumps, electric cars and solar panels are at risk of breaking down, exploding and causing power cuts in the hot weather. Well, let's talk to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who is very much enjoying the sun and not worrying too much about net zero from what I can see. Doogie, we spoke to you earlier on Saturday morning live. Lots of people really enjoying the sunshine, but there is a serious side to this heat wave as well, and that is that, bizarrely, renewable energy sources shut down a little bit in the hot weather, don't they?
Oh, well, they do, because I mean, we watched this in Spain and Portugal, where generators that actually generate your real electricity are actually internal combustion generators, and they must run at 50 ohms, not 49, not 51, or they knock off. And that's exactly what happened in Spain and Portugal. And of course, they committed the electricity to it, so they switched it off. And because the power line from France that actually supplies Spain and Portugal had a fault in it, well, then the regulation couldn't go in those generators and the whole place shut down. That is a problem that happens time and time again, especially with methane generators, etc., because they have to be regulated at a certain pace. But there's no regulation here today, Miriam. I can assure you, this is Margate, made famous by only fools and horses, jolly boys out. And you remember David Jason just sitting over at the pier and discussing the way of the world. Well, we can tell you, today, as much as this is lovely for Margate, and I mean it's brilliant, and we're so happy to see all the businesses in Margate really, really booming. I mean, this is amazing. But here's the problem. Seaside towns like this have been that run down over the last 10, 15 years on big days like this. I mean, I've tried to get an ice cream all day. You're waiting for 20 minutes in a queue to get an ice cream because there's not enough people here selling that ice cream. There's too much regulation on the beach, and even the cafes and hotels here, we had to actually queue to go to the bathroom for 15 minutes. So it does have its downside, but what a beautiful sight on that beach. I don't think I've ever seen a British beach packed like that. But when it's packed like that, Miriam, there's no playing football, no volleyball, nothing else, because, of course, there's nowhere to play. And the sand is that hot that it actually burns your feet. And things like this is a metal railing. It is also very, very hot, as am I, because I've been here all day. Although I did go in for a paddle earlier on, and it was quite refreshing.
Well, I've been in an air-conditioned basement all day, so I'll have to take your word for it. I do actually live in a seaside town now, so I'm looking forward to sampling the sunshine later. But in terms of the worries about global warming, it does seem as if Britain is about 1 degree C warmer than it was in the 60s and 70s. But you know, there is an upside to that, which is far more people die of cold every year than die of heat. And of course, we need to be careful in the heat. But nevertheless, global warming has its upsides, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but is it really global warming? Or is, you know, every so often, if you go to the Arctic and you drill down in the Arctic, you will find fossils of plants, tropical plants, everything else was there. The world constantly turns, the world constantly evolves. And I mean, coming from an agricultural background, I have seen that through years and years and years. I think from the 79, 1980, we're probably, weather-wise, about 5 weeks the wrong way. So we're now in the height of the summer, and the summer has actually only officially started. So usually the last 2 weeks in June, you got the hay in, you got the crops in, etc. And then, you know, you went on. But now it's getting far, far too warm, too quick. This would have normally been July weather, August weather. I remember as a child going back to school, and the weather was always splitting the clouds when, of course, we were going back to school. So yes, it does have a big effect, but we can deal with it and we can adapt to it. We always have.
Absolutely, and we spend most of the year waiting for the sunshine, so we shouldn't complain when it comes out. Dougie Beattie, thank you so much for spending the day on a beach for GB News. It's nice work if you can get it. Well, moving on now. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is preparing to ban Palestine Action, effectively declaring it a terrorist organisation. The group broke into RAF Bryce Norton, damaging 2 military aircraft. Well, joining me now is investigative journalist David Collier. David, thank you so much for joining me. Do you agree with Yvette Cooper on her plan to proscribe this organisation?
Firstly, thank you for having me on. Absolutely, I agree. My main question would really be why this didn't happen 3 or 4 years ago. The group has been around for 5 years. It's been targeting sites that are of strategic importance to the defence of the country. And absolutely, this group is a terrorist group and they should be treated as such.
Do you think that the Home Secretary will face any backlash? I mean, certain allied organisations, those who are committed to the Palestinian cause, have been complaining about this on Twitter, saying that Palestine Action should have the right in a democracy to freedom of expression, that, of course, criminal activities should be prevented and punished, but the group itself should not be banned. What do you say to that?
OK, firstly, in some ways, this just reinforces the fact this should have been dealt with a long time ago, because over the last 4 or 5 years, the group has piggybacked on our political weakness, on the weakness of our police forces, and on judicial weakness to create almost like a heroic situation where they're looked on as heroes by a lot of people within the Palestinian cause. There are hundreds of people that would identify with them now that would never have identified with them when the two started up. And it was basically 2 people that got this together in July 2020. If the first time they'd attacked a factory that was of strategic importance to the United Kingdom and the defence of us, then they'd been dealt with, thrown in jail with sentences. That would have been the end of it. So yes, I get you, you're right, but this is part of the weakness that we're currently having here.
Do you think there needs to be any legislative changes? Clearly, RAF Rise Norton was not particularly well defended. It's quite astonishing, really, that this group was able to get on site and get up close to these strategically important planes. But nevertheless, do you think our laws are strong enough in preventing this kind of sabotage?
No, I don't. And I think in many ways, as I said, we can add the media into this as well, in the way these people have been almost turned into heroes. I mean, look, the situation where they've been striking mainly companies like Elbit. Elbit is not here producing material for Israel. Elbit is here helping the UK defend itself. And these companies that Palestine Action have been attacking over the last 5 years are integral to the security of us, of our children, and of our streets. So from the very beginning, our system should have come down very, very hard on these people. And yes, it's a weakness that we have where they're basically abusing it, like so much of it. They see the weakness of our democracy. They see where they can manipulate the system, and they jump into those loopholes.
Do you think it's also to do with the actual view being expressed by these people? Had this been a far-right group or a different interest group, do you think the state would have cracked down harder than on an interest, which is the Palestinian cause, that actually many people in Westminster agree with?
Right. If this was a far-right group and all they'd done was verbally threaten, they would have been closed down 4 or 5 years ago. They probably would have been prescribed 4 or 5 years ago, just on the verbal action. Here, we're talking about people, thugs, who have gone into factories connected to the defence of the UK with sledgehammers and smashed these places up. And still, they were being put in front of juries that were basically, they were allowed to speak in front of juries who would sympathise with them, all buying into this fake narrative they're pushing. So yeah, absolutely, you're right. It would have been very, very different if this had been a different part of the spectrum.
David Collier, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your time. Well, let's speak. You're very welcome. Well, let's speak now to Heidi Backram, who is an organiser of the Yellow Ribbon Group. Now, Heidi's husband's relatives were taken hostage and murdered by Hamas in that horrific attack in October the 7th. Heidi, thank you so much for joining me. What's your view of this situation? Do you think groups like Palestine Action have a right to exist in this country?
Well, they have the right to democratically protest and peacefully protest, and they claim to, well, lots of people like Owen Jones on Twitter have been claiming that they're non-violent, which is actually not what they claim for themselves, so it's a big stretch. They call themselves a direct action group, and normally groups like that are doing things like locking gates together or getting in the way of things, but they don't ordinarily go in and smash stuff up. And for me, the biggest concern as a family member with lost loved ones is that they have other aims. So in their banners, they have the red triangle of Hamas, which has become a kind of symbol of support for them, coded. And then they have like slogans like Palestine is Arab, and they have other slogans like Smash Zionism. So they're not necessarily just what they say they are, which is their claim to be just advocating for Palestinians. They do have an ideology, and that is connected with people who are actual terrorists.
And why do you think they are given such cover by people like Owen Jones, by people in the political establishment, the media establishment? You know, of course, people are at liberty to disagree with Israel, to criticise Israeli policy, but the clear link with terrorism here, it seems quite astounding that this can be supported or overlooked for so long.
I mean, I think over the past almost 2 years, the general left has been radicalized towards a more extreme end of action on Palestine and Israel issue. I mean, the next day after October 7th, we were on the streets in Brighton and we witnessed somebody through a megaphone saying that the Hamas massacre was beautiful and inspiring. So, you know, we've seen that from the beginning, actually. And one of the co-funders of Palestine Action is charged with a terror offence for endorsing the attacks and calling for what was the Hamas name for it, the Al-Aqsa flood, to become a tsunami. And so, you know, this is not coming out of nowhere. They've been very explicit about what their intentions are and what they believe. It's just that now that they've attacked an RAF base, the state has to act.
There have also been reports today of increasing anti-Semitism in the UK. What do you think needs to be done for British Jews to feel safe again in this country?
I mean, we've seen a lot of inaction on groups like this, and that just sending the message that it's okay. I mean, Palestine Action have targeted Jewish businesses in the past, and they often make these kind of tenuous connections between, you know, supply chains, or they don't provide the evidence for them. They just sort of make these connections. And I think the police need to act more strongly, not just on Palestine Action, but on the hate marches that we see on the streets of London constantly. There's one today where we've seen Hamas red symbol, triangle symbols being displayed. And the one I just saw actually had the Manchester B symbol on it, which became very prominent after the Manchester Arena bombings. And I just think that is completely grotesque to see the terrorist symbol and the sign of resilience towards a terrorist attack from the same ideology being paraded through the streets of London like it's completely normal.
Heidi Backram, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Well, let's get the reaction of my panel now. We've got the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib, and journalist Benjamin Butterworth. Now, Ben, whatever you think about Israeli foreign policy or the Israeli government, some serious moral failings in our society if even some of our mainstream media cannot see the connection between the October the 7th massacre and what some of these groups are doing.
Yeah, so, I mean, to break into Bryce Norton raises, I think, some fundamental questions about our ability to secure our strategic interests. I mean, goodness knows what else they've done about which we're not aware at the moment. But, you know, we seem to have a complete moral and organisational collapse in the United Kingdom. You know, right across the spectrum of governance, from just doing the most basic things well to having a moral compass when it comes to setting policies and regulations and laws, and I know we're going to be talking about other subjects where that's evident. But here's one example. You have a group that is openly hostile to the United Kingdom's defence. We could, rightly or wrongly, we could any moment now find ourselves at war in Iran, with Iran. And we've got this group breaking into Bryce Norton, and apparently the establishment not really taking it all that seriously. They should have been apprehended. If they resisted being apprehended, they should have been shot. That's what would happen in a sensible country. But yet we're still just having a debate about whether or not it should be a proscribed group. You know, there are more proscribed Islamist groups in the UAE than there are in the United Kingdom. In fact, there are groups in the United Kingdom which the UAE has sought to ban because we're so welcoming of this malignant ideology.
Benjamin, do you think we do have a blind spot when it comes to pro-Palestinian groups?
Yes. I mean, look, you're allowed to support the Palestinian cause. You know, people can do that. That can sometimes be reasonable. There are many in Israel that care deeply about that. It's something they often think about. But these people are a danger to this country and a danger to the West. I've just been evacuated from Israel, where I spent 5 days and nights under missile fire from Iranian missiles and rockets. A missile hit 500 metres from where I was staying, and we saw the destruction of coffee shops and bars where we'd been just a day earlier. And so the threat that Iran and its proxies pose is real, and they are trying to destroy the values we care about. And I don't know how we got into a position where we are almost so privileged that we've become ignorant to the scale of that threat. These people are more dangerous than Hitler because they're trying to develop nuclear weapons. You know, when people talk about, is it OK that Israel wants regime change in Iran? Well, Israel wants Iran to have a government whereby its people can have freedoms and rights and liberties, and women aren't shot because they don't cover their hair. Meanwhile, Iran wants to wipe the Israeli state and the Jewish people off the face of the earth. Now, what is the point of Britain if we don't say that that is not OK and we're going to do something about that, and we're not going to let people prosper in our own country who want to wipe out the Jewish people in the Israeli state?
Indeed. Well, we will definitely be returning to the topic, but you're watching GB News on TV and on digital radio, and still to come, a rape charge against a man staying in an asylum hotel was kept quiet as officials feared inflaming community tensions. Well, I'll be speaking to the counsellor who was told to keep his mouth shut on that issue. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate, and this hour I'll be asking, was it a mistake to pass the assisted suicide bill? You're watching GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Back in 2015, Thornton and Cleveley's resident Emma Shepherd noticed the grass in her garden wasn't growing. Within months, she had to put down Alfie, one of her beloved dogs who had developed throat cancer. Just weeks later, she developed a lesion on her back, which would later be diagnosed as skin cancer. She knew then that something wasn't right.
I wasn't really aware of the history of the ICI site when I took the property. I did so much investigation. I had the ground tested with my own money. There was high levels of metals in there and some obviously cancerous carcinogenics in there. They actually nicknamed me Erin Brockovich because I was so all over it.
Last year, a joint investigation was launched by the Environment Agency and the local council. That was following the discovery of PFOA, a man-made chemical that potentially causes cancer. Both parties told GB News they are now working together on this matter, whilst the company under investigation for the potential release of the substance had this to say. AGC Chemicals Europe sets the highest standards for itself and takes its commitments to the local community and to the environment extremely seriously. They added that they voluntarily phased out the use of PFOA in the UK by early 2012. Release of the substance was within the permits held by AGC Chemicals Europe at the time, and also UK legislation in place at the time. And yet, 2 months ago, residents within a kilometre of the site received this letter from the council, advising them not to consume anything grown in their gardens due to potential PFOA contamination.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. I'm Miriam Cates and you're watching GB News on TV and on digital radio. Now, big news this week. In a historic vote yesterday, MPs voted to approve the assisted dying bill, which means that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to end their lives. Now, let's remind ourselves of the moment this took place in the House of Commons.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, and look!
And this was the moment that campaigners outside Parliament celebrated that result.
We won!
I think the vote was 314 to 291.
So, for our great British debate this hour, I'm asking, was it a mistake to pass this assisted dying bill? Benjamin, let's start with you. Some of the opponents of this bill have called it the assisted suicide bill because we already have assisted dying. That's called hospice care. How much do you think that the proponents of this bill have deceived themselves and the public about the safeguards in this? And do you think we should be concerned about the lack of provision, for example, for people who might be coerced into ending their own lives?
I mean, I think things like having to see the board of doctors and that a judge could be involved ought to be enough to
A judge is no longer going to be involved. That was the one safeguard that was removed during committee stage.
I think that, you know, obviously there need to be those protections. You look at lots of other countries and jurisdictions where this is already introduced and you don't find any of them wanting to repeal it. You know, some of them, they've tweaked it, but they haven't decided that it was the wrong idea. So that tells you something.
But how would we know that? They haven't had a referendum on it. How would we know?
Well, if there was enough support, they'd change it. That's how it works. So I think that tells you something about how populations feel when they get the option to do this. They don't tend to feel the coercion. But I think the principle is incredibly...
I've got to stop you there, because that's not what the evidence shows. I mean, certainly in Canada, 1 in 20 deaths is now from assisted suicide by the state. In every single jurisdiction where they've said, these are the safeguards, we'll keep it tightly within these rules, every single one, they've widened the criteria. In Holland now, a child can be euthanased.
I mean, I think that the rules in Canada are quite different to the ones that we've passed. They're more loose, for want of a better phrase, so it's probably not the best comparison. But what I would say is that the principle is incredibly important, because the idea that people don't take their own lives at the moment when they're in these scenarios is false. What we have now is an ugly, emotionally draining situation for all those involved, for which the state doesn't really know how to deal with it. Because there have been lots of cases where someone has taken their own life, or their partner, their life partner, has assisted them to take their own lives in these situations, and then the courts don't prosecute. But it puts them in a very difficult position, and it means those people are quizzed by police officers for hours because they have to do their job because it's the law of the land. I think that is a terrible mess. It is a terrible indignity. It puts a huge price on the loved ones that survive, and allowing a legal route to do this with safeguards is a much better conclusion.
Ben, will this clear up a mess?
So there are no safeguards that can prevent abuse. There cannot be enough, other than an absolute prohibition on the taking of one's own life. Because if you assume the state is capable of creating a system where you have a perfect set of results, you are deluded, if you don't mind me saying so, Benjamin. We just talked about our inability simply to protect Bryce Norton. This will be abused. And remember, we abolished the death penalty because there was a risk. There were many reasons to abolish it. But one, it was uncivilized, but also there was a risk that the wrong people may end up being put to death. And that was after a protracted judicial process. You might find someone guilty and therefore hang them or electrocute them. But here, you're actually removing any scrutiny of what would happen in someone's home, and you will be legalising the euthanasia, effectively, of the elderly and the vulnerable at a point in time where actually they may be incapable of defending themselves. It is an absolute travesty that we have the recognition that we shouldn't have the death penalty for severe criminal activity, but we're prepared to put to death those who are elderly and vulnerable. And we've lost the plot. It's an extreme form of liberalism that has gripped our governance. And on the altar of liberalism, we are becoming an increasingly illiberal society, and we can have a bigger discussion about it. But this is one example. The other example, and perhaps we're talking about it later, is the ability for women to kill their unborn babies up to 9 months. And they talked in Parliament extensively about the vulnerability of the woman. Not once did I hear any of the Labour bench talk about the vulnerability of the unborn child. And it's the same principle applies. And there's just one last thing I want to say, is that we've set aside, to such a significant extent, the importance of family and the role that family plays in the birth of a child, in the protection of a child, bringing up a child, and then, at the end of life, looking after our own elderly. We've abrogated those responsibilities to the state in many, many respects, and it's convenient, therefore, for the state to adopt these kinds of policies because, frankly, it's a pain in the neck for the state to have to look after the elderly and the vulnerable. This is a function of a breakdown in British society. We see it in lots of different ways, and this is perhaps plumbing new depths steps, but it is a reflection of and it's a function of complete collapse in our society.
Benjamin, can you see how, even if you support the principle of assisted dying, how this bill itself might not be safe? For example, its proponents rejected calls to prevent anorexics from applying for assisted dying. The proponents disallowed an amendment that would stop doctors actually suggesting assisted dying to patients.
Well, I think the law says that you have to be mentally capable in order to make this decision. So I would imagine someone that's suffering with such acute anorexia would not be deemed to be mentally capable.
Unfortunately, that's not true. I mean, that's what came out in the evidence. An anorexic is eligible.
But it doesn't mean it's not true. It means maybe there's the potential. But someone so severely ill as a mental illness like anorexia would not be capable of making the decision. But where Ben is entirely wrong is that Ben speaks in ideology, not in the reality of the situations people face. This has not come about in abstract. The reason why this has kept coming into the public domain is because the loved ones of these people and people in these scenarios where they cannot function, they are in unbearable pain. They are in scenarios that if our own pets are in that situation, we put them down because we know it is inhumane. And so when those people have come forward and said, I cannot live, it is hideous, the people around them cannot cope with this, they have wanted this change. Meanwhile, the opponents of it so often have not had that direct effect. But
how is it?
And I think we should listen to people. And the other point I'd make when you talk about the elderly is that you look at the polling, actually, when you get into the older people, they are more likely to be in favour of this. They're more likely to have seen people die in unbearable pain. And we should listen to those people that have actually experienced it.
Well, we will return to this subject. But one person who would completely disagree and who thinks this is completely ideological is Danny Kruger, who, of course, was the MP who led the opposition to this bill. And he tweeted out last night, the things our country needs more than anything are more children and more care for our ageing population. The Commons voted this week for the opposite, death to both groups. It's the revenge of the middle-aged against their dependents. We are ushering in a dangerous new politics, a sort of hedonic utilitarianism in which the convenience of adults is paramount even over the lives of the young and old. Well, you're with Miriam Cates on GB News, on TV and digital radio. And next it's time for the Great British Debate. Next time we're going to be asked, is it right to DNA test every baby? But first of all, here are your headlines.
Very good afternoon to you at 35 minutes past 3. The top story, while GB News can confirm that nearly 1,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel illegally so far this weekend. 437 arrived on Friday, with more than 500 others making the journey already today. Border Force and lifeboats have responded to at least 9 small boats in UK waters. 2 more vessels are still en route, currently in French waters, where new powers allow police there to intercept boats just 300 metres from shore. One group was forced to disembark this morning as officers slashed their vessel to prevent another launch. At least 8 people have died after a hot air balloon crash in southern Brazil. Officials say 22 people were on board when it came down in Santa Catarina state, with footage online showing the balloon catching fire before dramatically plunging to the ground. 2 survivors have so far been rescued and emergency teams are still searching for the others. The governor of the state confirmed the deaths, calling it a tragic accident. It comes just days after another fatal balloon crash in Turkey left 1 pilot dead and 19 people injured. Israel has launched another wave of strikes deep inside Iran, killing a top commander and exposing cracks in the country's intelligence network. Iran's foreign minister is warning United States involvement would be very dangerous. But Donald Trump says he's not ready to tell Israel to back off. Tehran is now refusing talks until the bombing stops, while claiming its nuclear programme is entirely peaceful. The UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the crisis is deadly serious and warns diplomacy must win. The Home Secretary is set to brand Palestine Action a terrorist group, calling their methods criminal and extreme. It comes after activists broke into RAF Briars Norton and sprayed red paint into the engine of a military jet. Counter-terror police are now on the case. The group's been behind a wave of stunts targeting London offices and even defacing Trump's golf course in Scotland. They say they're exposing what they call blood-soaked ties between Britain and Israel's arms trade. And brought back to the surface 10 months after sinking off the Sicilian coast, Mike Lynch's super yacht has now been salvaged after the accident last August that killed the British tech tycoon, his teenage daughter and 5 others. A report found the vessel likely capsized in powerful winds. Crews used one of Europe's biggest maritime cranes to lift the 56-metre yacht from the seabed. It revealed extensive damage to the hull. Those are the latest headlines for now. More in half an hour's time, and Miriam will be straight back after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Today is the peak in the current heat wave, with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty winds, torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland and western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching GB News. I'm Miriam Cates. Now, every baby is going to have their DNA mapped under an NHS revolution to predict and prevent disease. Health Secretary Wes Streeting says that it'll allow the NHS to deliver personalised treatment, allowing people to leapfrog killer illnesses. Apparently, parents will be able to give consent, but it means that their children will end up with information which some may not want to know and which could change their future. And there are concerns about the security of this crucial data. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it right to DNA test every baby? Benjamin, let's start with you. Is this a great advance or perhaps a sinister development?
I mean, it's a fascinating moral question, I have to say, and I've read about this for a couple of years because I think other parts of the world have already a bit more advanced in using it. The moral question really is whether you would want to know that you're at risk, what that does to your life choices, to your behaviour, to how your parents treat you, to how you see yourself. That can have a very significant impact on your life. I do think, though, that if you were to ask most people who have the natural misfortune to have a serious illness that they were always at risk of, if you were to say to them, well, we could have told you when you were 6 months old that this was there, and we could have told you the behaviours and the lifestyle choices to reduce that, and the circumstances where it might become more likely, and the medicine you could use to be preventative. I suspect if you ask those people who found themselves in those positions later in life, I can't imagine any of them would tell you that they wouldn't have wanted to prevent that. And so for that reason, it strikes me as a very practical idea and a good one.
Bernard, do you think?
Well, you know, for me, I travel in fear, perpetual fear of what the state wishes to do with information it gathers on us. And I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but armed with this information, and, for example, with the passing of the decriminalisation of abortion, you can see mothers basically, you know, DNA testing their children. They're, well, not quite right. Get rid of this one. And humanity was never meant to be perfect. It isn't perfect. We're all imperfect. We all have our issues and problems, and we struggle with them, and part of life is overcoming those issues. Part of the moral fortitude that we develop as we go through life comes from adversity. And if we're all going to be little perfect specimens at day one, or have our ailments predicted so they can all be, you know, catered for, I think we're diminishing our own humanity. But the real concern for me is what the state is going to do with this information. As I mentioned in the earlier part, in an earlier segment, you know, the coherency of family, the family unit, is forever being set aside by the state. The state is taking more and more control of our lives. From the moment a child is born, it goes into care so the mother can go out to work, and then all the way through the indoctrination of our children at school, which is now increasingly the case, to the way that they should think, the way free speech should be, or the absence of free speech. All of that, you know, is the state basically taking control of our lives. And then, of course, assisted dying. And this is just another step in that direction.
Benjamin, do you not worry that although this does have the potential for good, history teaches us that when human beings have this kind of level of knowledge, it isn't always used for good? And an example of that would be nuclear power. What an incredible technology. And yet we are still seeing today, right now, the ramifications of that ability to develop a nuclear bomb. Could you not see how this could be used for pure evil?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's possible, but by the time you've got...
Well, I'll give you an example.
But hang on, by the time you've got a state that wants to kill people with a certain disease, I think you've kind of lost the argument whether you have this data or not.
Almost no babies with Down syndrome are born anymore, because when a woman has a scan and finds out her baby has Downs, she is told, as an MP, said in the House of Commons yesterday, you can have a termination within 48 hours. Yeah, so that's actually happening already.
I've long thought that's wrong, and the advance...
But it's going to happen more if we have the ability to select the strongest through their DNA.
Well, hang on, I've long thought that's wrong because the advances in science and social changes mean that someone with Down syndrome has a much better life chance than I suspect they had when that law was made. So I think that should be changed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is when they're born rather than before.
Yes.
And so it's not going to affect abortion rates because they wouldn't have this information.
No, but that's not... I suppose what my point is making the analogy isn't this another way in which we can value disabled people, sick people less? Will we not get to the point where a health insurance company might say, well, sorry, we're not going to insure you because you might have this disease. In fact, don't have children because you might be carrying this disease.
Well, I've got good news, Miriam. We don't have a health insurance-based healthcare system as much as you might wish for it. Maybe you've just...
But some people need it for their job, for travel, for all sorts of things.
I think... Well, I mean, look, maybe that will happen.
Getting a house, a mortgage.
But ultimately, I think even if you ask people who face that scenario you describe, would they rather have a consequence of some higher travel insurance premiums that saves and adds 10, 20 years to their lives because they knew what was coming and were able to act accordingly? I bet you 100% of people in that situation would take that option. And yes, it could be abused, but by the time you have a state that wants to do that, you've got much broader problems.
But we've got those problems. They're here, Benjamin. They're here already.
And we're not... Also, you referred to sort of people's ailments. We're not talking really about developing hay fever or psoriasis or something, minor issues that people have in life. We're talking about killer diseases that you can stop the chances of them gripping you or gripping you soon as. And I think we would be barking mad to say that we've developed this technology technology, the incredible ability of humanity to get to a point in time where we can predict our own mortality in this way and not try to use that information. We do it all the time in the NHS and in healthcare in other ways.
Sadly, history teaches us that humanity always also has the greatest propensity to use that information for evil. So I am very concerned about this. Anyway, moving on to something cheerier. If you're in search of some holiday sun, could just go out into Britain. But here's the forecast for some of the European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The heatwave across parts of Spain, Portugal and France continues this weekend, with some places seeing temperatures peaking in the mid to high 30s or even 40 Celsius, so very hot indeed. Otherwise, and there are a few showery bursts here and there, but actually a lot of dry weather around, high pressure often in control. And if you do get any dry, sunny weather, well, it is going to feel very warm or hot indeed, and more sunshine to come as we go into the beginning of next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. GB News reporter Tony Maguire has been at the Royal Highland Show.
The Royal Highland Show is the gold standard of events celebrating rural life in Scotland. While thousands of visitors take in the food, machinery and events, thousands more animals compete for the prestige of brightly coloured rosettes. The Shetland ponies stand head and shoulders above the rest. Every shape, size and colour of sheep enjoys the gentle caress of visitors, and the cattle are performing as well in the show ring as they do on a buttered roll. Jack Cuthbert's Ardagh Hebridean sheep have won their category for the last 2 years. His fingers are crossed to make it 3 in a row.
It's hard enough to win the first time. Second time, you're really pushing the boat out, and third time, fingers crossed. I think everybody likes to win. You know, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you just have a drama with your friends, and that's just as good.
The Royal Highland Show is now more than 200 years old, and every year attracts tens of thousands of visitors to Edinburgh. Among the 4,000 animals competing for best in show ribbons are the fan favourite Highland coos and their extravagant beauty routines before going in front of the judges.
Firstly, we have to wash them in the morning, and then they get a quick blow dry. We brush them up, glue, limo shine. We brush that all together to make them look wider and longer and deeper throughout the body. And then the final touch is like a bit of oil on their horns to make their face glow up, to make them look nice for the judge.
There's no doubt the Royal Highland Show is a celebration of farming life, some respite from the political pressures of late. Ian Murray once worked at this very festival serving drinks at the Young Farmers' Ball. He returns this year as the Scottish Secretary and insists farmers should give Labour's trade deals a chance.
Paperwork, administration and bureaucracy was just meaning that a lot of exporters, particularly from Scottish farms, were not exporting anymore. We've swept all that away. The deal will be in place soon, and that will give them the opportunity to open up to all those markets. We need to be taking on those concerns, listening to them, reassuring people, but also saying, how can we, through Brand Scotland, help you exploit those new opportunities?
Scottish farmers are yet to be convinced on the deal on imported meat, warning the government about closing the stable door after the horses bolted. But few are letting politics get in the way of enjoying an unusually sun-soaked Highland show. Even on the farm, some things can wait till Monday.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Today is the peak in the current heat wave with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty winds, torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland and western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God.
thank you.
So you weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 4 o'clock. Welcome to GB News on your TV and digital radio. I'm Miriam Cates. I'm covering for Nana Akua. And for the next couple of hours, my panel and me will be talking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Joining me in the studio, I have Chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib, and journalist Benjamin Butterworth. Now, our top stories. A rape charge against a man staying in an asylum hotel is kept quiet as officials feared inflaming community tensions. I'll be joined by the counsellor who was told to keep his mouth shut. And every baby will have their DNA mapped under an NHS revolution to predict and prevent disease. Good idea, or could it be a bit sinister? And a primary school is teaching children about the 300 different flags of pride and the sexualities and gender identities behind each one of them. Have we completely lost the plot? And happy summer solstice. Thousands gather at Stonehenge to mark the longest day and shortest night of the year. I'll be joined by a pagan enthusiast to tell me why it's more than just bonfires and fairy dancing. But before we get started, let's get the news with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 4 o'clock, well, nearly 1,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this weekend. 437 arrived on Friday, with more than 500 others making the journey already today. Border Force and lifeboats have responded to at least 9 small boats in UK waters. 2 more vessels are still en route, currently in French waters, where new powers allow police to intercept boats just 300 metres from shore. One group was forced to disembark this morning as officers slashed their vessel to prevent another launch. At least 8 people have died after a hot air balloon crash in southern Brazil. Officials say 22 people were on board when it came down in the Santa Catarina state, with footage online showing the balloon catching fire before plunging to the ground. 2 survivors have been rescued. Emergency teams say they're still searching for others. The governor of the state has confirmed the deaths, calling it a tragic incident in Praia Grande. It comes just after another fatal balloon crash in Turkey left 1 pilot dead. 19 were injured in that incident. Staying with international news, and Israel has launched another wave of strikes deep inside Iran, killing a top commander and exposing cracks in the country's intelligence network. The foreign minister is warning US involvement would be very dangerous, but Donald Trump says he's not ready to tell Israel to back off. Tehran is now refusing talks until the bombing stops, while claiming its nuclear program is entirely peaceful. Foreign Secretary David Lammy says the crisis is deadly serious and is warning diplomacy must win. Well, last night, Donald Trump addressed reporters in New Jersey.
The material that they've gathered already, it's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen.
Dame Esther Ranson is urging the House of Lords not to block new assisted dying laws in England and Wales. MPs yesterday backed that bill by just 23 votes. It would allow terminally ill adults with under 6 months to live to end their lives with medical help. Opponents say it's being rushed through without enough safeguards. But Dame Esther Ranson's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, told us the process has been careful and considered.
It is a gold star of assisted dying laws. In fact, in the case of it having so many safeguards within it, it's actually incredibly difficult to access it. And it brings in criminal prosecutions of up to life imprisonment for anybody that has been found guilty of coercion. That doesn't exist now. It's a brilliantly safe law that has been talked about for so long. It has not been rushed through. There's no such thing as a perfect law. We all know that. But this is pretty close.
The Home Secretary is set to brand Palestine Action a terrorist group, calling their methods criminal and extreme. It comes after activists broke into RAF Briars Norton and sprayed red paint onto the engine of a military jet. Counter-terror police are now on the case. The group's been behind a wave of stunts targeting London offices and even defacing Trump's golf course in Scotland. They say they were exposing what they call blood-soaked ties between Britain and Israel's arms trade. Brought back from the surface 10 months after sinking off the Sicilian coast, Mike Lynch's super yacht has now been salvaged after the accident last August that killed the British tech tycoon, his teenage daughter and 5 others. A report found the vessel likely capsized in powerful winds. Crews used one of Europe's biggest maritime cranes to lift the 56-metre yacht from the seabed, which has revealed extensive damage to the hull. And I'm sure you've noticed already, but I'm going to tell you again, summer is certainly turning up the heat, with 33.2 degrees now recorded in Surrey today, making it the hottest day of the year so far, as if you need the news to tell you that. Temperatures could climb even higher tomorrow, with forecasters warning we might hit 34 degrees, the hottest June day in 6 years. But it's not all sunshine. A yellow thunderstorm warning is in place for parts of northern England and Wales, with flash floods possible. And there is an amber heat health alert in force, with health services bracing for the sweltering weekend. And as the sun rose over Stonehenge this morning, record-breaking crowds welcomed the summer solstice, the longest and hottest day of the year so far. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with all the headlines in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Miriam Cates. Now on to our top story this hour. Authorities in Portsmouth have been accused of covering up a rape charge against an asylum seeker who was staying in a taxpayer-funded hotel. This allegedly in a bid to avoid inflaming tensions within the local community was kept quiet. Well, in response, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick said that small boat crossings have become a matter of national security. Well, to discuss this further, I'm now joined by Councillor George Madrick, leader of Portsmouth's Independent Party. George, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. So can you just talk me through what's happened so far and what your role has been in exposing this?
Good afternoon, Miriam. Thanks for having me on. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's really important to note that there is a young woman that's a victim at the heart of this story, and I think that that shouldn't go past without mentioning, and obviously biggest sympathies to her and her family for this life-changing incident. It come to my attention a couple of weeks, well, about a week and a half ago now, via some social media posts from people that were speculating. Then about a week after that, I received an email, which was a confidential email from the council officers that basically said, this is what has happened, please don't say a word about it. Then I received a call later that day from a senior council officer who called me up and said, George, make sure you do not post this on social media, do not talk about it, do not tell anybody about it, you are privy to information. And that really angered me, because I thought that, you know, something like this should be public domain. It should be public knowledge. We should be trusted with that information and to decide how we wanted to. So I put a status out on Facebook just saying, as a councillor, sometimes we get privy information and it's really difficult to handle that sometimes, as we believe it should be public. And shortly after that, about midnight that evening, I got a text on my personal mobile from a senior council officer saying, basically, George, I've seen your social media post, and just ad-libbing here, basically told me to be quiet and not say anything, and basically said, remember that you're guided by the code of conduct, you're guided by this, etc., etc. This really upset me, so I took some legal advice the next day, and I was advised that anything I can find that's in the public realm, I'm allowed to talk about. So obviously I visited the courts the next morning, went to the court clerk, asked for details about the case, and they provided me with the name of the suspect. They provided me with the charge that he's been accused of, the fact that he's been remanded into custody, and his future court date, where he lives, etc. They provided me all that as public information. So what I had was completely public, and it gave me the ability to then talk about it.
Why do you think those officials wanted you to be quiet?
They mentioned community tension. They were worried about community uprising and issues. I think since the Southport issue, a lot of people are concerned. But Portsmouth's had no history of riots or anything like that. It didn't happen in Portsmouth. There was a little bit of community tension, obviously, last year, but nothing went ridiculous or went over the top. But it doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, the residents should know exactly what is happening. And, you know, you only need to look at the Merseyside incident where the police, before even making a charge, named the suspect. And in this case, for some reason, the council officers chose that we should keep our mouths shut. And with all due respect, I don't believe it's the council's officers' position to be telling us to do that in any capacity.
And have there been any consequences to you sharing that information?
Not yet. We're not on to Monday yet. So fingers crossed not. But we will see. Look, at the end of the day, I've sought legal advice. Everything I've said in my video on social media has been verified and checked by independent solicitors. They've said that I've stuck to the facts. I haven't disclosed anything that I was given to privy by the council. I've just disclosed exactly what you or anybody else could find by attending the court and asking for those documents.
But I mean, has there been any response from the public? Have there been riots? Were the officials justified in believing that it would stir up tensions?
Absolutely not. I mean, people are outraged, and of course they are, but I think people are more outraged about the prospect of not telling people. I think that's what the outrage is. I think, you know, there's been people that are angry and upset, but there's been no mention of riots, no mention of protests. People are just upset and angry and want to see action about this, and they don't want their officials and their politicians to be covering things up. And this is the fundamental point, and this is what I said to the officer on the phone the other day, is that you can't blame people, the general public, for not trusting politicians and public bodies when they're proactively trying to encourage people not to speak openly about something that is public.
And of course, many people are angry about the number of migrants coming across on small boats because of the cost of housing them, and the hotels arrangement is a case in point. But there is this other aspect, isn't it? It's this security issue, this behavioural issue of young men coming from countries where women aren't respected, they're a long way from their families, from the accountability of their communities, and some of them, sadly, seem to be able to act with impunity. This is not the only case, as I've said. Do you think we've been terribly naive about the social consequences of allowing asylum seekers to essentially live in community?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know that not every person that comes across on the boats is going to be awful bad people. Of course they're not. There's going to be some really genuine, nice people that just want a better life. In my opinion, they still should have come over via different methods, but that's a different debate. But at the end of the day, when these people arrive in our country and they're undocumented and unchecked, we have absolutely no ability to secure the security of our residents, our women and girls. And fundamentally, it's my belief that until such time, these people should be detained in some kind of facility where they can't walk the streets and attack women at 4 a.m. in the morning. You know, as I said, it's not saying that all of them are bad or all of them are going to do this. Of course they're not. But that few that will, that few that do, could be avoided by stricter measures. And that's got to change.
Councillor George Madrick, leader of Portsmouth's Independent Party, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Now, I need to read this right of reply from Portsmouth City Council. A spokesman said, "We knew the Home Office accommodation link would become public knowledge through the court proceedings, and based on events elsewhere in the country, we're conscious there may be community tensions related to it." Quick word from my panel on that. Benjamin, secrecy is never a good policy, is it?
Well, no. As a journalist, I think public bodies should be as open as is reasonable, and it sounds like that wasn't entirely reasonable. Look, on the one hand, when you've got someone accused of a crime, a live court case, you have to be careful because you undermine it if people start saying things in the public domain that stop a court process, a jury process happening. So that's a reasonable prevention. But if you're behaving differently on the information you give the public for someone in this scenario in a migrant hotel compared to if I'd been accused of something, well, then that's completely wrong because that's having two different sets of rules.
I mean, Ben, you can see why the council might be worried about this. I mean, it sounds like there haven't been any protests or tensions, but nevertheless, you could see why people might want to.
Well, I think Councillor Madrick hit the nail on the head when he said that the more likely result of trying to cover it up was protest and anger. And that's what happened at Southport, because everyone tried to cover up the identity of Axel Rudakabana. The Prime Minister described him as a Welshman, which was a deflection. It was trying to cover the whole thing up. And people aren't stupid. People have woken up to the reality, not that it needed much waking up to, that if you allow people to come to your country who have no right to be here, about whom we know nothing, many of whom hold us in contempt, there is going to be damage to civil society in this country. And the takeaway for me, and it's the takeaway every single time, is enforce our wretched borders. Borders are not a nice to have, they're a must to have. No borders, no country, no protection of society.
Indeed. Well, we're going to stick with that topic of immigration because in a survey published today, we can see that Labour voters now believe that immigration is the biggest burden on the NHS. This was a poll of 2,000 respondents. It also found that people feel immigration has more of a negative impact on the health service than elderly members of society. Meanwhile, 20% of those who voted for Sir Keir Starmer would now consider switching to reform. So, for this great British debate, I'm asking, is immigration the biggest burden on the NHS? Benjamin, I was quite surprised at this poll because obviously high levels of immigration are deeply unpopular amongst people of all voting preferences. But nevertheless, it's interesting that people have linked this now to pressure on the NHS.
Well, you're more likely to be helped by a migrant in the NHS, someone as a doctor or a nurse, than you are to be behind them in the queue. And so I think immigration has benefited the NHS. I was in hospital on Thursday dealing with the consequences of my evacuation, and many of those people were, by the sound of their accents, not born in this country, and they were very helpful. So, you know, there are loads of immigrants that came to this country over the last 2 generations that help us. And also the evidence shows that immigrants to this country use the NHS less, because obviously a great many of them are working age, they're young, they're not likely to have serious ailments, they probably don't have kids, and so that's quite helpful to our economy as far as I'm concerned. I would just say, though, that Brexit has caused a big problem, which is that we went from having large numbers of European young, healthy workers that would come here most likely for a couple of years to make money and then maybe go home, to having people with entire families and their parents and wives and kids coming from countries like India and Ghana and Uganda and stuff. Those are some of the main countries whereby they're far more likely to need healthcare for all their family.
That's right, isn't it, Ben? I mean, there are a lot of problems with mass immigration, absolutely, but because most immigrants are actually younger than the average Brit, they use the health service less. They're not actually the burden that people perceive them to be.
Well, I think that's a fine argument, and I'm not sure the statistics behind it. But the big issue in British politics at the moment is immigration. And one of the problems I think that the two legacy parties, if I can call them that, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party have, is that they haven't recognised that it's no longer the economy. It is culture, constitution, the territorial integrity of this country, civil society in this country. These are the big issues that they have to get a grip of. And frankly, the policies and regulations adopted by the government in order to promote the multicultural ideology are actually economically deeply damaging as it happens. You know, DEI, setting aside meritocracy in favour of employing people, on the basis on the colour of their skin, and all of that. That is deeply damaging. And the other thing I'd just pick you up on, if I may, Benjamin, is this notion that the English and the Brits are incapable of doing the work that immigrants do. It's not a reluctance to do the work that keeps people at home. It is a welfare and benefit system that is out of control, and it is a taxation system that is out of control. And when you compare the burden of taxation and regulation on those who work with the benefits that they get if they don't work, there simply isn't enough of a gap to incentivise people to get off their sofas, require people to get off their sofas and go and work. And we've plugged the gap in the lazy way of having mass immigration. And it's actually exploitative, if you think about it. Oh, the Brits don't have to do this, but we'll get someone from the developing and third world to do it instead.
But Ben, I think most people would agree that there are too many Brits not in work, especially young people, but nevertheless, even if they were all in work, the ratio of 20-year-olds to 60-year-olds in this country has halved since the 1980s. Yes. We don't have enough of our own young people, which is one of the drivers for immigration. Not that that's an excuse for the political policy, but it is a driver for immigration.
But there's no excuse for the form of immigration we've had.
No, I agree with you, but back to the NHS, the biggest burden is the ageing population, and if we don't deal with that issue, it's not going to help the immigration.
I mean, I remember reading an analysis in The Economist recently that said that our projections for our economy in 20 years are much better than many similar European countries because of the migration levels, because it will mitigate the number of people who are retired. I'd also just point out that one of the sharp rises in people not working in the last decade was when the rules were changed for early retirement, and so lots of people took early retirement, and those are quite valuable workers, probably
in the medical profession.
So that wasn't very helpful either for our
particularly
economy.
In the medical profession.
But, you know, I just think that, I mean, immigration is too high, right? The Labour Party even said that before the last election. 1 million people is obviously ridiculous. But the question is where you draw the line, because, you know, our care homes would not be able to function if we close the doors tomorrow. And you have to be realistic.
I don't think that's borne out by the facts, actually, because after the pandemic, there was a shortage of care workers, and the government at the time opened up the health and care visa system. In the first, I can't remember if it was 12 months or so, they issued well over 100,000 visas, and yet there was a drop of just 15,000 vacancies. So either these people are displacing British workers, or they're coming across and not obeying their visa rules, but essentially allows care homes to keep wages very, very low.
They're undermining wages.
Can I just say two things? One is that there's so much abuse of the care workers visa. I mean, I know an Indian person I know who's very skilled, very capable. He was saying that lots of his colleagues who've come from India, they're on care workers visas. They're not care workers, but they feel like they
can't say that the care system would fall down if we stopped immigration. There's no evidence for that.
There's loads of abuse. Lots of those people certainly aren't care workers.
But, you know, it comes back...
Sorry, I was going to say... no, I've forgotten the other point.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Come back to it.
I was just going to say, it comes back to the family again. You know, we talk about the care of the elderly through the prism of social care. But what about the family looking after their elderly? We wouldn't need all this immigration if we still had the familial unit at the heart of British society. We don't. And you talked about the need for more children. You don't sort the nation's needs out through immigration. You sort the nation's needs out by making it possible for people to have children and have them cost-effectively with the mother or the father giving pastoral care at home, not the state yanking these children away from their parents, shoving them into some school for indoctrination, as I've said before in this programme. What we've got to reinstill the very basic building blocks of society, and that starts with the family. And we would have more children, and we would have better care if that family unit was reinstated. But all the policies adopted by government strip away self-determination, break families and empower the state.
We're going to have to leave it there. I'm sure you'll be able to come back later on, but you're with me, Miriam Cates, on GB News and TV and digital radio. Still to come, my difficult conversation this afternoon. Well, as MPs back legalising assisted suicide, I'll be joined by disability campaigner George Fielding, who's called this bill state-sanctioned suicide. But next, we'll be asking a doctor whether it's right to DNA test every baby. You're watching GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, you can, but no one likes a snitch. And I think office politics are often hard enough and enough of a minefield without getting involved. I think you have to leave it to the management. Unless you're their manager or their supervisor, I think trust in the process, don't stick your nose in, because everyone always shoots the messenger. And in my experience, whenever I have flagged anything, it has normally turned round and bitten me rather nastily. So I wouldn't be getting involved.
But everybody suffers, Steve. That's my point of view. We're all being dragged down by these people who aren't pulling their weight.
Oh, I say bring on the snitch, whatever you want to call it, because at the end of the day, of course, you know, I go to work to earn my money. I don't go to work to earn your money. And coming back to the point the other contributor makes, you know, if the manager is a good manager, and let's say they are, then they'll obviously keep it confidential as well. The other thing we have to remember is that if someone is not pulling their weight, it builds up resentment. It builds up frustration and irritation. The other thing I would say as well is that a lot of teams out there, especially sales teams and customer service teams, are bonused on the team result. So, you know, if someone's behaving like a tortoise and I'm behaving like a racehorse, I'm sorry, I'm snitching.
Yeah, I mean, Sally, it's not fair on the whole team, is it, if somebody isn't pulling their weight?
No, that's absolutely true. But in a sales environment, that person will not last long. They will be thrown out. It just doesn't happen. And maybe I'm just not that much of a team player. I don't really care what anyone else is doing. As long as I'm all right, then I'm not going to worry about anybody else.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:25. You're watching GB News, and every baby will be DNA tested under new plans to predict and prevent diseases. Well, Health Secretary Wes Streeting says it'll allow the NHS to deliver personalised treatment and so that people can leapfrog killer illnesses. Well, GP, medical writer and GB News host Dr Renee Hunderkamp joins us in the studio. Renee, with your doctor's hat on, many hats that you have there, how do you view this announcement?
So I was really worried about this when I read it this morning. That was my immediate approach. It was, you know, firstly, the way that the story is being promoted is that it will just happen. And I think this is something that has to consider consent. And there's a big ethical question around whether you can consent for a newborn baby, for them to learn about a disease that may not have a treatment, may change the course of their life, may change their behaviour. For example, people who find out they have Huntington's disease because it's in their family, which has no treatment, some of them actually completely change the course of their life because they sit anticipating. So I think ethically there's a minefield to cross before we get here. The other thing that I thought about, Miriam, is yes, it would be good to know about really serious genetic, and we already do that to a degree. We find out, for example, if a baby has cystic fibrosis, you know, but that's if they've got the disease.
And these are all things where early treatment can really help the outcomes.
Thyroid disease. If you don't treat your baby for thyroid disease, it will be disabled for life. It will die. So yes, those are really important. But as for everything else, whilst there are some things that we can predict and alter, much of what happens is still lifestyle. So ischemic heart disease is still the biggest killer of men in this country. And that's down to lifestyle, weight, diabetes, blood pressure. All of those things are controllable to a degree. Now, I accept that there is a gene for cholesterol. Some people have naturally higher cholesterol, but you can still modify it through your behaviour. So are we just infantilising people again?
Yes, and are we missing the point? Because, as you say, if we ploughed this money, instead of into DNA testing every baby, into actually helping the public to lose weight, to drink less, to be fitter, we would massively reduce the burden on the NHS. People would be happy and healthy without these ethical dilemmas of what do you do psychologically about knowing that you could be in for a nasty disease.
Yeah, we know obesity is actually now going to be the biggest burden on the NHS. A gene isn't going to tell us that. This is about lifestyle. And the other thing about this is this information is going to be so valuable that once again, your baby becomes a commodity. Yeah. This information will be sold, it will be utilised by drug companies, and on the flip side of it, it may actually hinder your chance to get travel insurance, life insurance, things like this. So there are massive ramifications for this. And I think it's been hailed today in all of the papers as this massive advance that's going to change the world. I don't think it is.
I agree, because even though you can tell from genomic testing what genes a person has, we still don't know fully what causes some of those to be switched on and off at different points in life. I mean, of course, that technology may come in future. What do you think about the potential, though, for sinister use of this? So either commercially, but also potentially by people with poor motives who want to design particular diseases or drugs that might target certain sections of the population.
Because it will be such a massive data bank, and this is what they would be looking for in order to do that. And so that is a massive worry. The other thing that it's been mooted as being able to do is stop mass population screening. Well, that's a nonsense, isn't it? Because, you know, I heard somebody say this morning, well, if you've got the breast cancer gene, then you'll get screening, but then another woman doesn't have to go through it. The biggest contributors to breast cancer are obesity, alcohol and lifestyle. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you've got the gene or not. Lots of women who have the gene don't get breast cancer, and lots who don't have the gene do have breast cancer.
So as well as giving some people a lifetime of worry, it could also give some people false hope that they aren't at risk. Do you also think this could be used in a way to help people or not help people decide whether or not they should have children? And would that take away the kind of element of chance that, let's be honest, human life involves?
Yeah, and this is really interesting, isn't it? Because we've seen parents with a genetic deafness who don't want their baby screened for it because they don't want their baby to be different to them. And there's part of that which is a bit selfish, I think, because if your baby cannot have a severe disability, then why wouldn't you? But then I guess the reverse is true as well, where those people might suddenly say, or with other diseases, well, no, actually, We just won't have children because we're going to give them this gene.
And that's an example of the slippery slope argument, isn't it? Is that something that's designed for a particular purpose that's probably sounds very altruistic can actually be taken into a full eugenics argument.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, do you remember the Minority Report where we were going to be able to predict people's behaviour, and it never came to that because we can't. I think this is the same. I think in an ideal world, this sounds wonderful, but then I do think you're right. It starts to get people thinking at a far deeper level than they should when planning to have a baby.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be thinking about these things. You should be thinking about the joy of having a baby.
And it undermines our deeply held belief in Western society that people are all equal, regardless of what disability they might have, regardless of what background they come from. We value all human lives equally, and things like this allow us to start differentiating between the able and the disabled, the strong and the weak.
And I mean, people are always a little bit uneasy when we say, oh, well, we can design embryos to have blue eyes, and we can. We definitely do have that technology, but nobody's really embracing it. So why would they embrace this? Because it's just another step.
Well, there are, I mean, very wealthy people in America are embracing the designer babies, and,
but
you know, I think that's
the average person, it doesn't happen because it's very expensive.
Exactly. But underneath all this is a desire, probably from the Health Secretary, to reduce the burden on the NHS, because whatever you think of DNA testing, it is a fact that we are struggling to afford the size of our healthcare system. What do you think is the answer if it's not DNA testing?
We need to get people to look after their health. I mean, I honestly mean what I'm about to say to you, Miriam. 80% of the people that I'm dealing with in GP every day that have got high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol is lifestyle. Yeah. And if we got people down to a healthy weight, exercising regularly and eating non-processed food, we would get rid of most of it.
But when, I'm going to be very unpopular for saying this, but when there are no consequences in terms of access to healthcare for having those lifestyle choices, it's very difficult to persuade people not to. In countries like, for example, in Japan, they've got a very interesting policy where essentially if you have a BMI of over a certain level, you can't get healthcare.
And also,
or you pay through the notes for it.
Also in Japan, and you read my mind about Japan, your employer has a responsibility to keep your BMI in healthy range, and people get weighed at work, and the employer gets fined if he has workers or she has workers that are over a certain BMI. Nobody in Japan is fat. It
exactly.
works.
Now, I'm not suggesting GB News should weigh us every morning, but you never know. We're going to have to leave it there, Renee, but I know you're on later. You're watching GB News on TV and digital radio, and still to come with my difficult conversations. As MPs back legalise assisted dying, I'll be joined by disability campaigner George Fielding, who's calling the bill state-sanctioned suicide. But for our next debate, I'm asking, should primary school children be taught about pride? Well, let's get your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom at 33 minutes past 4. Nearly 1,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this weekend. 437 arrived on Friday, with more than 500 others making the journey already today. Border Force and lifeboats have responded to at least 9 small boats in UK waters, and 2 more vessels are still en route. They're currently in French waters, where new powers allow police there to intercept boats 300 metres from shore. One group this morning was forced to disembark as officers slashed their vessel to prevent them making another launch. Here, Dame Esther Ranson is urging the House of Lords not to block new assisted dying laws in England and Wales. MPs backed the bill yesterday by just 23 votes. It would allow terminally ill adults with under 6 months to live to end their lives with medical help. Opponents say it's being rushed through without enough safeguards, but Dame Esther's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, told us the process has been careful and, she says, considered.
It is a gold star of assisted dying laws. In fact, in the case of it having so many safeguards within it, it's actually incredibly difficult to access it. And it brings in criminal prosecutions of up to life imprisonment for anybody that has been found guilty of coercion. That doesn't exist now. It's a brilliantly safe law that has been talked about for so long. It has not been rushed through. There's no such thing as a perfect law. We all know that. But this is pretty close.
And at least 8 people have died after a hot air balloon crash in southern Brazil. Officials say 22 people were on board when it came down in Santa Catarina state. Footage online showing the balloon catching fire before plunging to the ground. 13 survivors are known to have been rescued as emergency teams continue the search for any others. The state's governor has called the incident tragic, and it comes just days after another fatal balloon crash in Turkey left one pilot dead and 19 people there injured. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you at the top of the hour. Now, though, it's time for a quick break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Today is the peak in the current heat wave with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty winds, torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland and western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm Miriam Cates. You're watching GB News, and on to our big debate. Swindon and Wiltshire Pride have handed out leaflets to primary schools explaining the 300 LGBTQ+ flags, and it's sparked debate over age-appropriate education. But the charity has defended the move, claiming that the material promotes inclusivity. So for our debate this hour, I'm asking, should primary school children be taught about Pride? Well, joining me now is Chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib, and journalist Benjamin Butterworth. Now, Benjamin, let's start with you.
Is me first.
I know, I don't know why I'm doing that. Let's start with Ben then, OK. But I know what you're going to say,
Yeah,
Ben.
that's probably why you don't start with me.
Actually, I agree with you. Going to get some balance. I mean, Ben, this is not really about inclusivity. This is just madness. There aren't 300 different types of flags and sexualities, are there? It's made up.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? Why can't they do things in 2s and 3s like it used to be when I was at school? You could remember what they were. 300 flags, you can't even remember what they are. But No, I mean, the whole thing is ideologically based, isn't it? The same ideology that goes with multiculturalism, diversity, equity and inclusion goes with LGBTQ. It's all part of the same panoply of brainlessness, frankly, is the only way to describe it. And of course, the most vociferous part of the LGBTQ brigade are the transgender component. The gays, you know, being gay nowadays it's normalised. It doesn't require a movement. It's perfectly accepted in society. No one regards anyone who's gay as being, you know, outside of the outside norms. It's the transgender movement that is trying to get on the bandwagon of the now accepted, you know, homosexuality in society, and they're using it. They weaponize it, and they're not even teaching children about the existence of LGBTQ. What they're trying to do, and I touched on it earlier in earlier segments, is indoctrination. They're trying to win over these children to their ideology. They're indoctrinating them. It is politicization of children at a very, very young age. It should stop.
Benjamin, it would be one thing if this booklet was based on facts, but it's not. I mean, there's 300 made-up identities.
Well, as a gay that knows lots of the gays, let me say that I've never met a gay man or a lesbian or whatever in my life who hasn't faced challenges from family members, from people they went to school with, maybe even in the workplace. I'm afraid that while attitudes have significantly changed in a generation, we didn't sort of start being born in 2014 when they gave same-sex marriage. Lots of us live with the consequences of that trauma.
But do you see
and
yourself?
That's why it's important.
Do you see yourself
tackle.
as a natural ally to the trans movement? Because for me,
yes,
they're totally different things.
Yes, and so do the vast majority of gay and lesbian people.
But let's just get back to this primary school issue, because you know what you're saying about prejudice and facing the challenges is one thing, but it does not follow that the answer to that is to teach primary school children about issues that are way beyond their understanding and maturity and their parents' consent.
I think in this case, it's probably well-intentioned but poorly executed. Frankly, there's no point showing a 9-year-old or something 300 pictures of flags, because they're never going to process that information regardless of what the topic is. So it's utterly pointless. It complicates a situation that's unnecessary. They don't need to be burdened with that complexity of it. There's no point, there's no benefit, they're not going to absorb it. It's not really indoctrination because they're never going to understand it. But there's a different point here, which is the principle, which is that, you know, for many years, Margaret Thatcher introduced Section 28, which banned local authorities such as schools and libraries from mentioning the fact that gay people exist at all. Now, I was the first year, 2003, of going to secondary school when that didn't exist. That's how recent it was. And so that is an incredibly dangerous way to behave. That is erasing people. I think we're much better off that, you know, primary school kids should be aware that this exists. There should be storybooks which reference it in an age-appropriate way. They shouldn't be denied to know that there might be another kid in the class with 2 mums. That is all normal. And I'm afraid there are people that want to take that away, and it would be dangerous to take that away.
But why should primary schools, the state effectively, have the responsibility of educating children about social ideas, which there isn't consensus for?
Yeah.
Should they not be sticking to reading, writing and PE?
Well, that's why I call it indoctrination. And, you know, it is a highly divisive subject. It's a highly debated subject. And there are no settled conclusions. And you know, I think it's damaging. Again, it's one of those things that I find damaging to society, because it's setting aside, in many respects, you know, common sense, the familial unit, again, about which we've talked so much in this programme so far. And it is indoctrinating these children at a very, very young age. When I was at school, we weren't taught about sexual reproduction until I was 14. And even then it made me sort of giggle, because I didn't really understand the whole concept. You know, and to be doing it at the age of 3 or 4 and normalising it, it's just not right.
It is normal.
No, but it isn't. Being trans is not normal. It's not normal.
It's not normal to have 300
It is a mental health issue.
It's not. That's incredibly insulting.
It's a mental health issue.
But
not being happy in your own body.
They exist. No. People who are transgender have existed in every period of history, in every part of the world.
I don't deny it.
Men who dress as women have existed, but the question is there such a thing as someone born in the wrong body? And there is no evidence for that.
Yes, because both of you...
Whose body were they born in?
Both of you speak in ideological terms and and not in the reality of
I'm
what
a biology teacher, I have a degree in genetics, and I can tell you there are two sexes.
But you're not transgender. And so tell me...
But what does it mean to be transgender?
Why do you think, then, if we were to take your argument, that there are people from far more oppressive societies than our own who cannot live without being transgender, without explaining to the world or to their friends that they are fundamentally different in their mind to their body? Why would someone choose that? Because that's the implication of your argument, that somehow it is a choice, it is an indoctrination. Nobody would choose that. The choice is to reject their ability to live their lives freely.
It's the mechanism by which we're required to accept it. I totally
you are
understand.
required to accept it because that's called decency.
I totally understand that a John may wish to be a Jane, and if he wants me to call him Jane, that's fine. But the fact is, he's still male. I can be respectful. I can be sympathetic.
It doesn't. It affects them far more than it's ever going to affect you. That's why they have such a high suicide rate.
But let's bring this back to children, and whatever we believe that adults can do in their free time and in a free democracy, it's nevertheless really important that children understand the difference between men and women. That's a key safeguarding implication, and that they're not told things by adults that aren't true and that aren't evidence-based. And wouldn't it be better, Benjamin, if primary schools just stayed away from this area altogether? Not to teach children to be prejudiced, not to teach children that certain people don't exist, but to stay away from this topic because it's not age-appropriate.
If you're denying the existence of people that exist in society, then that is the definition of indoctrination. If a child asks a question about this because maybe they've seen it on television, if you were to say that school shouldn't be able to answer the question about the fact that a trans person exists or a gay person, that would be indoctrination. But let me tell you, let me just finish. Let me just say, as a gay person, I can tell you, every gay person in this country, let alone trans person, would tell you that they were indoctrinated to be straight as a kid. Their parents would tell them fairy tales of a man and a woman falling in love. The books at school would all be about straight people. The social and cultural references would all be heterosexual, and yet they turned out gay. Don't tell me that we're indoctrinating people in that direction.
You're conflating issues. You're conflating issues, because what these children are being told is actually, if John wants to be Jane, he will become a woman, which is absolutely ludicrous. What they need to be told, if they're to be told anything, is be sympathetic, be kind, understanding. But John doesn't become Jane.
We are going to have to leave this hot topic. Well, Swindon Borough Council declined to comment, but a spokesman for Swindon and Wiltshire Pride said, "We were invited into a small number of local schools. Our support guide contains no sexual content whatsoever. It's disheartening, though sadly not surprising, to face unfounded attacks or misrepresentations of our work. As a visible LGBTQIA+ charity, we know that some individuals may seek to undermine the progress we're making in fostering a more compassionate, inclusive society." Well, there you have it. Still to come, I'll be discussing everything to do with the summer solstice today with a pagan expert.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes to 5. I'm Miriam Cates. You're watching GB News. And happy summer solstice. That is today. Thousands of people gather at Stonehenge to mark the longest day and shortest night of the year. So what's all the fuss about? Well, historian, author and cultural adventurer Mark Rees joins us now. Mark, thank you so much for joining me. What's the significance of this day today, the summer solstice?
Thank you. It's great to be here. And it's great to be recognised as a cultural adventurer as well. But as you've touched upon, the big thing today is that it is the longest day of the year. In the UK, we're hoping to get about 16.5 hours of daylight today, so there's still quite a few hours left after this interview finishes. Of course, it's also the first day of summer officially, so astronomical summer, which starts now. And outside of that, it's also for centuries been a time of celebration as well. So we've got the official reasons, which are the start of summer and the longest day, but then you have all the added extras, like the things that you see going on at Stonehenge.
And yes, tell us what will happen at Stonehenge then today.
Stonehenge, well, it starts, I mean, it might be stating the obvious, it starts by watching the sunrise. That's the main point of it, that's where it all kicks off. But from then, it really is such a diverse gathering of people that are there from, I mean, there's the pagan people who make all the photographs and make the headlines, the people dressed as druids and so on. But you'll see families there, you'll see grandparents and grandchildren there. So it's a huge, huge mix of people doing everything from, it can be simply dressing up or having a picnic to more sort of ritualistic behaviour. So it's a very, very popular day for what is known as hand fasting. And this is a pagan form of wedding where you almost literally tie the knot. You tie the knot around two people's hands. So it's a time for unofficial weddings, you could call it, for hand fasting, and just for generally having a good time, a good-natured time with dancing, music, picnics, dressing up.
In some ways, it's amazing that this has carried on throughout the centuries. Is this a declining understanding, or are more people joining in with this? Really, really briefly.
Really briefly, I'd say no, it's on the rise massively. I think people do need some kind of spiritual, whatever it is in their life, and as traditional religion maybe is declining slightly, this is what people turn into instead. We're
going to have to leave it there, but Mark, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm so glad there is some sunshine left, because I have been here in the basement since 7:30, so I'm looking forward to enjoying some sunshine later on. You're watching me, Miriam Cates. We've got plenty more to come, but first of all, we are going to the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Metafis. Today is the peak in the current heat wave, with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland Highland and Western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of Northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up? About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we're in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello, it's 5 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. I'm Miriam Cates. I'm covering for Nana Akua. And for the next hour, my panel and I will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Joining me is the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib, and journalist Benjamin Butterworth. Now, it's officially the hottest day of the year as experts warn of a net zero meltdown with electric cars and solar panels at risk of explosion. So is it finally time to accept the government's green policies are nothing but hot air? And MPs have backed legalising assisted dying in a historic vote in Parliament. I'll be joined by disability campaigner George Fielding, who's called the bill state-sanctioned suicide. And up, topping the list of England's most depressed areas is Stockport suburb Brinnington. So is the north just more miserable than the south, or is the study nap but tripe, as we say in Europe? Well, let's get the news with Sam Francis before we go any further.
Miriam, thank you. The top story at 5 o'clock. Nearly 1,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this weekend. 437 arrived on Friday. 500 more made the journey already today. Border Force and lifeboats have responded to at least 9 small boats so far in UK waters. 2 other vessels are still en route, currently in French waters, where new powers allow police there to intercept boats just 300 metres from shore. One group this morning was forced to disembark as officers slashed their vessel to prevent another launch. In Brazil, at least 8 people have died after a hot air balloon crash in the south of the country. Officials say 22 people were on board when it came down. Footage online shows the balloon catching fire before plunging to the ground. 2 survivors have been rescued and emergency teams are still searching for others. The governor has confirmed the deaths, calling it a tragic incident. It comes just days after another fatal balloon crash in Turkey, leaving 19 injured. Israel has launched yet another wave of strikes deep inside Iran, killing a top commander and exposing cracks in the country's intelligence network. Iran's foreign minister is warning that US involvement would be very, very dangerous. But Donald Trump says he's not ready to tell Israel to back off. Tehran now is refusing talks until the bombing stops, while claiming its nuclear program is entirely peaceful. Foreign Secretary David Lammy, though, says the crisis is deadly serious and is warning diplomacy must win over escalation. Well, last night, the US President Donald Trump addressed reporters on the situation in New Jersey.
The material that they've gathered already, it's a tremendous amount of material. And I think within a matter of weeks, or certainly within a matter of months, they're going to be able to have a nuclear weapon. We can't let that happen.
Here, Dame Esther Ranson is urging the House of Lords not to block new assisted dying laws in England and Wales. That follows a vote in the Commons yesterday, with MPs backing the bill by just 23 votes. It would allow terminally ill adults with under 6 months to live to end their lives with medical help. Opponents say the law is being rushed through without enough safeguards, but Dame Esther's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, told us the process has been careful and considered.
It is a gold star of assisted dying laws. In fact, in the case of it having so many safeguards within it, it's actually incredibly difficult to access it. And it brings in criminal prosecutions of up to life imprisonment for anybody that has been found guilty of coercion. That doesn't exist now. It's a brilliantly safe law that has been talked about for so long. It has not been rushed through. There's no such thing as a perfect law. We all know that. But this is pretty close.
The Home Secretary is set to brand Palestine Action, a terrorist group, calling their methods criminal and extreme. It comes after activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and sprayed red paint into the engine of a military jet. Counter-terror police are now on the case. The group's been behind a wave of stunts targeting London offices and even defacing Donald Trump's golf course in Scotland. They say they're exposing what they call blood-soaked ties between Britain and Israel's arms trade. Brought back from the surface, to the surface rather, 10 months after sinking off the Sicilian coast, Mike Lynch's super yacht has been salvaged after the accident last August that killed the British tech tycoon, along with his teenage daughter and 5 others. A report found the vessel likely capsized in powerful winds. Crews used one of Europe's biggest maritime cranes to lift the yacht from the seabed, revealing extensive damage to the 56-metre hull. And summer has well and truly turned up the heat, with 33.2 degrees recorded in Surrey today. That does make it the hottest day of the year so far. Temperatures could climb even higher tomorrow, with forecasters warning we might hit 34 degrees. That would be the hottest June day in 6 years. But it's not all sunshine. A yellow thunderstorm warning is in place for parts of northern England and Wales, with flash floods possible. An amber heat health alert also remains in force, with health services bracing for the sweltering weekend. And as the sun rose over Stonehenge this morning, record-breaking crowds welcomed the summer solstice, the longest day and now the hottest day of the year. That's it from me for now. I'll be back with you in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to GB News. It's 6 minutes past 5, and as Sam has just told us, it is officially the hottest day of the year. Britain is sweating as temperatures have soared well into the 30s. But Environment Secretary Ed Miliband has been warned that the heatwave will trigger a net zero meltdown because apparently heat pumps, electric cars and solar panels are at risk of breaking down, exploding and even causing power cuts. Well, let's hear from our reporter Dougie Beattie, who spent today in sunny Margate.
The sunshine in Margate has brought out the tourists, but look behind us, it's also brought their money. Even the ice cream vendors have a huge queue behind them. It's nearly impossible to get an ice cream here. Right up the beach here, you can see behind us, this is something like at a Costa del Sol. There is hardly a space left in that beach to even play football. I mean, this is amazing for a British holiday resort. You can't see the seagulls overhead. They are really starting to dive bomb into the crowds. And those people, well, they're coming up with food every time. You can see how far the tide's gone out. That's about to turn. That will turn in the next hour. So, and as it comes back in, well, it will basically half the size of the beach. Now, earlier on, I spoke with a few of the people that's behind the sunshine.
I think we're doing pretty well. We've got a high-speed train line from St Pancras. We've got a great art gallery, got lovely cafes. I think we could probably do a bit with rubbish cleaning and making it a bit smarter.
I'm struck by the charm. It looks to be in transition, but look at what it has here to offer people. I'm here. I'm going to stay for a few more days, that's for sure.
I think it's really nice. It's good for families because it's got a lot of beaches and it's got some nice restaurants and there's obviously the arcades as well. So, yeah, it's quite nice. Nice beach.
Because I like the beer. It's very cold and nice. Sunshine.
You like the beer?
Yeah, of course I like the beer, yeah, all the time. You like the beer too? I saw your face. You look like me. You drink too much last night, yeah? Me too.
Was one of the first towns to actually introduce bathing, and that's because it's one of the only sandy beaches in this area. The rest are stone or pebble beaches, and so bathing here really suits Margate. It has been fantastic to see how many people have been here, but of course our seaside towns will require more days of this sort of heat to really make the money to keep them going throughout the season.
Well, hopefully Dee can go and have his well-earned chilled pint now. Be needing it after all that sun. Well, joining me now is the director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montford. Andrew, we're all celebrating this wonderful sunshine. We don't get enough of it in Britain. But there are serious consequences, aren't there, if we continue to rely on renewable energies?
Yeah, well, we've had this report today that there are issues with some of the technologies associated with net zero in hot weather. I don't think I would sort of attach too much importance to this. I mean, compared to the ordinary problems that net zero technologies bring, I mean, this is just, if you like, the icing on the cake or something, you know, or the straw that broke the camel's back, perhaps. You know, I mean, the net zero is, you know, it's central planning writ large, isn't it? I mean, you know, We know from, a century of experience that central planning doesn't work, and centrally planning the energy system clearly isn't working either. We have the most expensive electricity in the Western world, and if it's going to start going wrong in hot weather, well, yes, that's just going to make things worse. But let's look at the big problems, I think, is what I would say.
I think people are concerned about potentially temperatures heating up. It does feel as if Britain is hotter than perhaps it was a few decades ago. But do you think we are overestimating the consequences of this? I mean, it's certainly true that far more people die of cold each year, about 10 times actually, die of cold each year than they do of high temperatures. So should we be worrying about this as much as we do?
No, we really shouldn't be worrying about this at all. I mean, what you say about deaths from cold as compared to deaths from high temperatures is absolutely right. The really surprising thing about that is also true in countries that we think of as hot places. So more people die of cold in India and Australia than die of heat in India and Australia, for example. Temperatures always change, and they change over decades, they change over centuries, entirely naturally. And humans are very, very good at adapting. We adapt incredibly quickly. If we get a run of dry years, farmers will change to slightly different crops. But we don't actually need to panic and wreck our economy. We don't need to trash the way we live simply because it's a degree warmer. I mean, this is utter madness, and we are in the grip, essentially, of a millenarian cult, and they are taking us towards disaster. We've seen the economy has deindustrialized at the most incredible pace. We're left with almost nothing now, and what we are left with looks like it's going to shut down over the next few years. This is not a sensible response to a change of a degree and a little bit over the last 40 years. I mean, that's madness.
Now, Andrew, in theory at least, renewable energy sources should be low cost. I mean, the sun is free, wind is free. Do you think they should be part of our energy mix? And if so, how should we better utilise them so that we have more security and that we do drive costs down?
No, we absolutely should not be using them. The reason is that... Absolutely at all. No, we want no wind and we want no solar. These are absolutely terrible forms of energy. Yes, they have no fuel costs, but the capital costs are enormous, and the cost of dealing with the intermittency is catastrophic. And we're finding this out now. This is why we have such expensive electricity. I mean, there is this myth doing the rounds that it's something to do with gas prices. Gas prices have come down again. They're back to where they were 5 or 6 years ago. Until at least they were until a week ago when the war in Iran took off. But the big changes that we've seen over the last 10 years are down to net zero policies. The big changes in electricity prices. It's all down to dealing with intermittency. And the big one is subsidies to renewables, and that is only going to get worse. We can expect electricity prices to keep going up, but we're doing this bonkers thing. We're trying to get people to use heat pumps and electric cars that run off this form of energy that is getting more and more expensive. And it's not a straight line increase. It's going to start accelerating as well. This is, again, absolutely bonkers. Do we want to have manufacturing industry in this country? Because if we carry on the way we are, there will be none, absolutely none.
Andrew Montford, thank you so much for joining me. And let's throw this to the panel now. I mean, Ben, Andrew's obviously very sceptical about renewables, but should there be some place for it? At least if it's in this country, we own the sun. We own the sun that falls here, we own the wind that falls here. We don't have to rely on imports if we use renewable energy.
Well, I think to the extent that we've already built some renewable energy infrastructure, we might as well leave it in place. I can't see any case to be made to remove that which already exists. But, I haven't studied the entire Western approach to net zero, but we've taken a particularly bad route. And the reason I say that is that in advance of having the technologies, assuming the technologies are capable of being produced, in advance of having the technologies that can take the place of fossil fuel, we shut off fossil fuel. And So we've ideologically decided that's where we're going, and we've turned off North Sea gas, we've turned off North Sea oil, and there's a lot of it, by the way. We've stopped mining coal, and actually coal is critical for steel production. We want to rattle our sabre with Iran and with Russia, but we don't have the steel-making capability required to actually arm ourselves. So we've geopolitically weakened ourselves. From an energy perspective, we've weakened ourselves. We've damaged the economy terribly on the altar of net zero. And the other thing I'll just quickly mention is that the regulatory and legal framework associated with it is also deeply damaging. I'm in property, and by 2030, all commercial buildings in the United Kingdom need to be Energy Performance Certificate B rated. 80% of commercial property in this country does not comply with that trajectory. So we're going to have real pain in our commercial property market between now and 2030. And that will manifest itself in the real economy, because the real economy exists through property. You need offices, you need retail space, you need leisure and so on. And so we're doing deep, deep damage to the economy of the United Kingdom on the altar of this ideology.
Benjamin, what do you think? Should we ditch renewables?
Well, I'm certainly not going to lose sleep over landlords having
It's not landlords, it's you that are going to suffer.
Well, I don't think that's true, because rents have gone up at a rate that bears no relation to the rest of the market and the economy.
But that's why you're suffering. That's why you will suffer, because
it's not. We're suffering when, people that rent properties have to pay sky-high bills because all the heat is let out of the old buildings that haven't been looked after. And at some point, we have to tackle the fact that we have a very old housing stock in this country, and it's very inefficient, far more so than our European neighbours, and we have to deal with that. And I think putting a deadline on it is a pretty good way to get people to deal with it.
Well, it's a good way to get people to sell off their properties because they can no longer afford to rent them out and sell them to big international companies.
Build millions more, and then it won't be so profitable for
Let's get back to the topic. Are renewables an important part of our energy mix, or are they too unreliable?
Absolutely. I mean, the sort of one salient point that was made is that we have become dangerously reliant on global events and on countries that don't have our own interests at heart, and that's one of the reasons, the central reason, why costs have rocketed. It's not the so-called green taxes, which are a very small part of the increase we've seen in the last couple of years. And therefore it follows that the most rational thing that we can do as a country that needs to be self-reliant is to have solar, is to have wind power, because we generate that at home. Now, at the moment, we have a problem that it's still tied to global market rates, and so it kind of undermines the efficiency of that. But these are the ways to fix the problem, that we generate our own energy rather than being reliant on Russia or Saudi Arabia or China or anywhere else that wants to exploit us.
Now, Benjamin, I'm going to completely change tack, because you have been in Israel for the last, for over the time that the war started, effectively.
Yeah.
And you had difficulty getting home. Can you tell us how you did get home?
So I was in Israel last week, and then Thursday night we were woken up by sirens that a state of emergency had been declared in Israel, and I spent 5 nights under missile and rocket fire from Iran, in and out of bomb shelters. You'd get 90 seconds to run into those, and a missile hit 500 metres from the building I was in, which is... You can't really process it at the time, to be honest. And then last Tuesday, or this Tuesday, actually, I was put in the back of a blacked-out van in Tel Aviv, and we were driven early in the morning, where they thought there was a gap of safety, up through the West Bank to the border with Jordan.
Wow.
Now, when we got to the Israeli exit, missile attacks came in at about 8:30 a.m., close to where we were in the West Bank. It's worth noting the Iranians are trying to kill the Palestinians and the Arabs. They don't care. And that was close to where we were. And we all had to freeze and take cover inside before we were able to leave, because there were these missile attacks, and you could feel the floor in the building shaking. I mean, it's really hard to imagine. It's deeply inhumane. I was then taken across the border into Jordan, where 2 British officials from the embassy in Jordan gave us biscuits and water, but they couldn't offer any other help. And it was the Israeli government and the embassy in this country that helped me get out of Israel.
So not the British Foreign Office?
No help from the Foreign Office. And I have to say, I don't know any Brits there that were happy with what was offered. There was no help coming. And actually now the British Foreign Office has said we'll do evacuation planes when Israeli airspace opens. The airspace will open when the war, this episode of the war is over. That's no use whatsoever. It's pathetic. And so I think there's a lot of anger from Brits trapped in Israel.
And do we know how many Brits are trapped in Israel?
I don't, but certainly I'd imagine it's a significant number because we have such a long exchange of people between our two countries.
People holidaying and everything.
Then I got to Amman, where I was flown to Istanbul and then Istanbul to London by Wednesday morning. So I didn't sleep for 6 nights, 5 of them because I was under missile fire and 1 because of the ordeal of being evacuated. I ended up in hospital on Thursday because when you're there, there's an order to the events. You hear the siren, you go in the bomb shelter, you mingle with other people. There's a blitz spirit, as we would call it. But as I got back, it all started to kind of overwhelm me, what you'd been through. By Thursday afternoon, I could barely put one foot in front of the other because my whole body was just overwhelmed, literally nervous system in shock, overwhelmed with adrenaline. So I had to be prescribed beta blockers, which I think turn off adrenaline. But it was quite an extraordinary physical reaction. You know, it was like if you think your home is being broken into in the middle of the night, that utter panic that you have. I felt that for about 36 hours after getting back. And mentally I was OK, but I couldn't turn it off. And so there are 2 things. There'll be lots of Brits that are coming back that have real trauma from that. Some of them will be more directly affected. But the other is, it's also a lesson that this is what Israelis face all the time. It got worse on October 7th, but it didn't start then. The Yemenis, the Gazans, the Lebanese, the Iranians fire rockets at Israelis all the time. And so when we're talking about who started this recent provocation, well, I tell you what, if Wales was firing rockets at Norwich every day, I tell you what, I don't think we'd settle for it. And I think I got a chance to put myself in the shoes of those Israelis, and it really makes me see just how bold and how necessary what they're doing is.
And an extraordinary resilience as a nation. Well, thank you for showing that. I'm glad you're back safe. But
I don't know if the viewers wanted me back, but I'm afraid I am.
Well, I'm glad you came back safe. Well, do stay with us because next we're going to have a difficult conversation as MPs back legalising assisted dying. I'll be joined by disability campaigner George Fielding, who's called the bill state-sanctioned suicide. Don't go anywhere.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
The heatwave across parts of Spain, Portugal and France continues this weekend, with some places seeing temperatures peaking in the mid to high 30s or even 40 Celsius, so very hot indeed. Otherwise, and there are a few showery bursts here and there, but actually a lot of dry weather around, high pressure often in control. And if you do get any dry, sunny weather, well, it is going to feel very warm or hot indeed, and more sunshine to come as we go into the beginning of next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations forecast.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Sally first. How can this be good?
I'm not sure if it's good, but I wouldn't say it's bad. I would defend everyone's choice to, if they can afford it, send their child to whatever care facility that they choose. And I think when you're talking about very young preschool children, there's an awful lot of life ahead of them where, you know, they can learn that life isn't always going to shower you with rose petals and tasting menus. If it suits the parents, if it suits the child, why not? And we are talking about a very small sector of society who, A, can afford this sort of option with your preschool childcare, and it's for a very short time. So there's obviously a market for it. They've come all the way over from Singapore to set this up. It's their first outpost in the UK. So, yeah, good luck. If there's a gap in the market, fill it.
I know I'm a mother of 4 and I've got my own business, and even when we sit down for tea at night, I'm still on my phone, I'm still emailing. So for me, it's kind of like, I'm wondering if these parents are working 24/7 and they're trying to offset the guilt because they're really time poor with the kids. I mean, I've got 4 boys and I do think I naturally pamper them, because I don't know about you, Stephen, but when I was growing up, I was constantly told I didn't even know I was born, whatever that means. And so it's like, I think each generation we pamper our kids even more, you know?
But Davinia, when you're sitting down with your kids having dinner, are you giving them a crisp golden spanakopita with refreshing tzatziki, followed by smoky jambalaya studded with free-range chicken and prawns? Or are they getting beans on toast?
Funnily enough, Stephen, that's a no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Miriam Cates, and now it's time for this week's difficult conversation. And we've got in the studio here with me now disability campaigner George Fielding. Now, this comes as MPs have voted to approve the assisted dying bill, which means that terminally ill adults who are expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to end their lives. Now, George, who's with me here now, says that it should be called state-sponsored suicide.
Indeed.
George, tell me what you think about this bill.
It's the worst bill to have been passed through Parliament in a generation. It changes our very relationships with the state, between doctors and patients, and what it doesn't account for is the fact that hundreds of thousands of people feel like a burden every day because they do not get the support that they require through social care, palliative care, the welfare benefit system. And what you are going to, and there is no way that doctors can actually object to doing this, so you're just going to pass on people's requests. All you're going to do is create a two-tier system between doctors that don't want to perform it and doctors that will, but everybody who says that they wish to die will find a way to die on the NHS, which is not the cradle-to-grave service that Nye Bevan worked so hard to found all of those years ago.
Now, during the passage of the bill and the scrutiny, some MPs did try and bring amendments to the bill that would protect disabled people. They were rejected by the bill's proponents.
All of them were voted down. So they voted down an amendment to say that you couldn't use feeling like a burden as a reason. Voluntary eating and drinking is a legitimate way to qualify now, which means that people with anorexia, which is a mental illness, can qualify. It means that anybody managing with a lifelong condition like mine, who acquires something like diabetes, diabetes patients that go without insulin would qualify, and anybody with a lifelong condition that goes unmanaged and therefore have 6 months to live will qualify. What we are not doing here is standing up for the voiceless and those that do not have the resource. In every other... assisted suicide is actually a westernised, rich phenomenon. And that's because everybody is scared of death. But it's not. It's something that none of us can avoid. None of us can avoid death. And what that means... We need to build services and structures around that. Palliative care, only a third of hospices are state-funded, criminally hard to access. No therapies, no support for people who are going through the worst moment of their lives, but it's not something we can avoid, and we can't legislate because of unprocessed pain.
Now, and indeed, pain is not actually even a requirement under this bill. You don't have to be in pain. It's just that diagnosis, which may or may not be accurate. But somebody like Dame Esther Ranson, who's been campaigning for assisted suicide for a long time, would say that individual human beings should have full autonomy. They should have the right to choose the moment of their own death. But do you think this idea of having full autonomy is something that perhaps only wealthy people have? Do people who are disabled, do people who are vulnerable feel that sense of autonomy?
Well, I have actually never disagreed with Dame Esther Ranson on anything but this issue. And I actually thank her now and Rebecca, her daughter, because every time they intervene, they make our argument stronger, because she should have died 18 months ago.
That was her prognosis.
And that was her prognosis, and she's still here through actually miracle medication, which I'm really quite glad that she's been able to access. But she's had 2 birthdays and 2 Christmases that she shouldn't have had otherwise, and many conversations with her loved ones that somebody in pain, somebody with no choice may wish to have. Suicide is not a choice, and living without support as a disabled person is not a choice, but it is a lived reality. 1 in 4 people living in poverty have a disability, and we have no support either for carers. In the most struggling homes across this country, they're like tinder boxes of domestic violence, coercive relationships, because people are struggling, and burden and coercion are incredibly hard to spot and train on. Now, under the provisions of this bill, I think they say that every doctor who is trained for this will only receive an online course on coercion. So it's not. This has been rushed through, and only this week, 80 MPs, no, more than 50 Labour MPs said they wanted more time. They've made a black and white decision, a life and death decision, which they were not ready or qualified to make. And this is the first private members' bill that the new intake of MPs have ever voted on. Why now? Why this? What? Because sadly, it's convenient and cost-effective to get rid of people, to kill people whom we do not know how to support. But that is not the right answer.
Very briefly, George, what is your message to the House of Lords, who now have an opportunity to scrutinise this, to amend this, perhaps even kill the bill?
I hope they do kill the bill, but I don't actually think that's possible. What they need to do is scrutinise this line by line. What they need to do is scrutinise this line by line, promote alternatives at every stage. They need to realise that this bill is not ready to be unleashed on the public, and if it be unleashed on the public, harm is going to be caused to our most vulnerable communities. That is no epitaph for a public servant.
George, thank you so much for joining me on this very, very difficult issue, but a very passionate and articulate campaign there. Thank you so much. Well, you're with me, Miriam Cates, GB News, TV and digital radio. And still to come, is the North more depressing than the South? Well, first of all, your headlines with Sam Francis.
Miriam, thank you, and good evening to you. 32 minutes past 5. Nearly 1,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this weekend. 437 arrived on Friday, more than 500 others making the same journey already today. Border Force and lifeboats have responded to at least 9 small boats in UK waters, and 2 more vessels were seen en route in French waters, where new powers allow police to intercept boats just 300 metres from shore. One group this morning was forced to disembark as officers slashed their vessel to prevent another launch. As we were hearing, Dame Esther Ranson is urging the House of Lords not to block new assisted dying laws in England and Wales. MPs backed the bill yesterday by just 23 votes. It would allow terminally ill adults with under 6 months to live to end their lives with medical help. Opponents, though, say the law is being rushed through without enough safeguards. But Dame Esther's daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, told us here on GB News the process has, she says, been careful and considered.
It is a gold star of assisted dying laws. In fact, in the case of it having so many safeguards within it, it's actually incredibly difficult to access it. And it brings in criminal prosecutions of up to life imprisonment for anybody that has been found guilty of coercion. That doesn't exist now. It's a brilliantly safe law that has been talked about for so long. It has not been rushed through. There's no such thing as a perfect law. We all know that. But this is pretty close.
And at least 8 people have died in Brazil after a hot air balloon crash in the south of the country. Officials had initially said 22 people were on board. We now know 21 were in fact on board that balloon when it came down in Santa Catarina state. Footage online showing the balloon catching fire before plunging to the ground. The state government press office has said 13 survivors have been taken to nearby hospitals. The governor has confirmed the deaths, calling it a tragic accident. It comes just days after another fatal crash in Turkey left 19 people injured and 1 dead. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with your news at 6, and Miriam will be back after this break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Today is the peak in the current heat wave, with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty winds, torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland and western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Miriam Cates, and the Mail Online has revealed England's depression capitals. Topping the list is Stockport and the Wirral, where nearly 1 in 3 GP patients, particularly in the Stockport enclave of Brinnington, have been diagnosed with depression, while on the opposite side of the scale is London's Knightsbridge, which is the least depressed place in the country. So for this great British debate, I'm asking, is the North more depressing than the South? And I'm delighted to be joined down the line by fellow Northerner and former MP for Don Valley, Nick Fletcher. Hey up, Nick. How are you?
How's that doing?
Yeah, well, good. I'm afraid I am now unofficially a southerner, so I'm so sorry to let the side down. But it is great to see you. What do you think of this report? I mean, it does seem that people in the north are more likely to be diagnosed with depression. Is that because of the north or because of something else?
I think there's a multitude of reasons. I mean, it's an odd adage that it's grim up north, and obviously parts of it are like parts of everywhere in the country. There's so many different aspects to that. I've spent a lot of time working on suicide, which is obviously a really troubling subject, and there's lots and lots of different reasons that happen. But no, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's grim up north. I love the north. I love Yorkshire, and yeah, no, there's issues, and they all need addressing.
Do you think the link is more with poverty than geography, and it just happens that a lot of these areas that used to have very profitable industries, they've all gone, and actually for a lot of people, particularly men, which I know you're particularly concerned about, don't have that employment, that industry, that purpose that perhaps they used to have?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think poverty plays a huge part in that, but I also think value too. These industries gave people value. They felt as though they were worth something, and unfortunately, as you know, there's an increasing welfare state out there, and unfortunately, when people do fall into the welfare state, yeah, they can probably just about survive on the money that they're getting, but they don't have any value to themselves. They don't feel as though they're contributing, and although it might sound blissful not to have to get up in the morning and do that work, trust me, it's not. It's deeply depressing being made redundant. It's deeply depressing not feeling as though you've got any worth, and that's something that I really tried to work at when I was down in London with yourself.
Mm. And do you think that we've got the treatment right? I think about 1 in 5 British adults are on antidepressants, but it doesn't seem to be making us happier. Do you think there are alternatives to using drugs?
Yeah, very much so. I think unfortunately, a lot of mental health issues now, I think mental health issues have become the new bad back for lots of people. And I know a lot of people will chastise me for saying things like that, as though I don't want to help people who've genuinely got mental health issues. But what unfortunately is happening is we've got too many people who are diagnosed with these problems when a lot of the time, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, they are just going through a bad patch. The sad thing is with that, it does take money and resources from those that really do have serious mental health issues. I really do believe exercise is one of the best things you can do. I think a job's fantastic. I think getting up, getting out, being with people, being part of community is a huge thing that we all should do, because we can all slip into it. I mean, we can all have knocks in our lives, and we can all slip into it, isolate ourselves. And before we know it, we're literally on a downward spiral. So I would encourage everybody to get out there. And as I say, even if it's just walking the streets, just get out, say hello to people. That's one thing that we do seem to do better in the north, is say hello to people when we pass them in the street.
That is so true. And when I first was elected and came down to London and used the tube, I started talking to people on the tube, like we do on the bus in Yorkshire. Yeah. And people looked at me like I was absolutely mad. And I soon learned not to do that again.
I always remember Paul Hogan on Crocodile Dundee walking down the streets of New York saying good day, mate, to everybody, and it always made me laugh. And we do say hello to each other, especially in Doncaster, where they're happy people, we say hello to each other. And you don't get that on the tube. Obviously, there's an awful lot more people, and you don't know the people anywhere near like you do in these communities like that we've got. But no, it's not grim up north, it's wonderful.
It is, absolutely. Well, there we go, Nick Fletcher proving that it is wonderful in the north. Thank you so much for joining me, Nick. I mean, there are definite differences between north and south, aren't there? And I've certainly felt that moving from north to south. But nevertheless, there is this reality of some seriously deprived towns where people do lack for jobs, money and hope.
It's not exclusively the north that suffers that. You know, we have that in London, actually. I've campaigned across London in various elections, and you'd be surprised the poverty we have in London. We think of London as the economic powerhouse of the United Kingdom, but actually lots of boroughs are extremely badly off. And again, it's just not the biggest deficit economy, actually, in the United Kingdom is Northern Ireland. £8,000 per head per annum from central government just to keep Northern Ireland's economy going. And that's no reflection on the Northern Irish. It's actually a reflection on bad government policy. It could be a powerhouse of an economy if it was treated properly. For example, it's got a corporation tax rate that's twice the Republic. So, you know, businesses are sucked to the south. But I thought Nick spoke unadulterated good sense, a sense of purpose in life, having something to go to, work to do, feeling valued, having a purpose is so critical to one's mental well-being. And the only thing I'd add to what he had to say is two things. First is that in order to be comfortable in one's own mind, you obviously need to feel confident that you've got a roof over your head, you've got food, the basic essentials of life are sorted. But then the other thing, and certainly, at least as far as I'm concerned, that really gets me settled in my mind is having something to look forward to. And that doesn't mean a holiday, but some aspiration, some goal that I'm going to have in my business or my private life or political life or whatever it is. This is what I'm going to do. And the other word for that is aspiration. And we've drummed aspiration out of society. We've become a country of dependency. We've become a country of wealth redistribution rather than wealth creation and aspiration. And we've got to go back to that. We've got to get people feeling, yes, I'm delighted to be up this morning because I'm going to do X, Y, and Z.
We've got very little time on this section. So, Benjamin, very quickly, what do you think?
I grew up next to Stockport, SK9 postcode, and I loved it. I would say that there's serious poverty in parts of London, but there's a sense of hope in London. London is actually a really great example of social mobility, whereas some of these places outside, you know, in the northeast, northwest, they don't feel like they've got the hope, and I think that makes a difference. But Northerners have a much better attitude, I would say. We're much nicer, we're much friendlier, we're much more open. You don't get that in London.
As I said, you get on the bus for a chat in Yorkshire, never mind where you want to go. Anyway, still to come, the Quickfire quiz of the week. I'm a little bit nervous about this. You won't want to miss it, but I've told it's going to be fun. Stay with us.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored. Very, very racy tonight. On the unpredictable. What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. It's 10 to 6. I'm Miriam Cates. And now the section that my panel have been anxiously waiting for the last 3 hours. It's our Quickfire quiz, which is the part of the show where I test the panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. And I'm joined again by Ben Habib and Benjamin Butterworth. Gentlemen, I hope you have your buzzers ready.
I spent half the week in a bomb shelter, so I'm not going to be across it. That's my excuse.
Do you know, that is a pretty good excuse, I'll give you that. Well, question 1, and these are multiple choice. Which British tennis player lost in the semi-final of the Queen's Championship today? Was it A, Jacob Fernley, B, Cameron Norrie, or C, Jack Draper? Ben?
Jack Draper.
Let's have a look and see if you're correct. Ding, ding, ding. Yes, C, Jack Draper. I don't know. How do we score this? I'm not quite sure. Do we just do a tally?
That's my guess. I was just hoping Ben would get it wrong and I'd have a process of elimination.
Ben 1, Ben 0. There we go. It's all very clear. Question 2, which is an open question, not multiple choice, so it's getting harder. Happy birthday to Prince William, but how old did he turn today? Benjamin?
43?
I think that is correct. I saw it somewhere earlier. Yes, very good. 1-1.
1-1.
That's close.
I thought he was in his 30s.
Oh, wow.
Not with that lack of hair.
Ooh. He wears hats a lot of the time. Right, question 3, and this time it's the closest answer to the truth that wins. What majority did the assisted dying bill get in the House of... Oh, I think slightly ahead, Benjamin, there.
23.
Very good. Were you going to say the same?
I was going to say 21.
Oh, well, yeah, that's fine. You were wrong twice. OK, 2-1 to Benjamin. Question 4, true or false? Today is the hottest day of the year in the UK and London is hotter than Alicante. Ben?
It's got to be true, hasn't
it? All right, it is true. London hit highs of 32 degrees Celsius, Alicante 31.
It's hotter than Jordan, where I came from.
So. That's phenomenal. It's 2-2. It's neck and neck. Hopefully in the gallery you can tell me what the prize is going to be. I hope there is going to be a prize to this hotly fought contest. Question 5, multiple choice. Which pop star did Dua Lipa bring out at Wembley last night? A, Mr. Worldwide, Pitbull, B, Jamiroquai, or C, Dido? Oh, that was a tie. So I'm going to go to Ben first.
Jamiroquai.
Oh, it's Jamiroquai, and I'm off to see her in about an hour, so...
Oh, there you go. It is. So I think I'm going to give you both a point.
No, come on, I got there first.
It's identical.
Yeah, I couldn't quite tell.
But we're both Dua Lipa fans, we were discussing.
You're both Dua Lipa. Oh, good. Well, I'm afraid I'm fairly clueless, so I'm not going to talk about that.
Let's do a tie.
Yes.
So
it's all about equal outcomes, isn't it?
Oh, golly, we need a tiebreaker. Well, that means that I need to think of a question. I'm not sure I can...
No, let's leave it
on the spot.
Let's leave it as quiz.
It's been what a week for news it's been. I mean, both domestically, internationally. We've talked a lot about domestic news and those controversial bills in the House of Commons. But as we finish the show, let's just talk about what is next for the Middle East, because it seems clear that Trump might be deciding to use those massive bombs that only the B-2 bombers can deliver to essentially wipe out Iran's nuclear capabilities. Good thing for the world?
Well, it'd certainly be a good thing for the world. The valid question is whether you could cause regime change that is replaced by something better from the outside. Recent history is not positive on that front. So that's a valid question about whether they should do it. But they absolutely have to disarm Iran. And the ignorance to this in the West is incredibly dangerous.
Very quickly, we don't want regime change.
I advocate challenging the Iranian regime. I think we need to do it strategically. What we mustn't do is get caught in another Middle Eastern war.
Well, thank you both, Benjamin Butterworth, Ben Habib, so much for joining me today. Nana Akua is back tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We do have Saturday 5 coming up next, and I think Renee is going to be debuting as host, so do stick around for that. They've got lots of exciting things to talk about. What is on the show tonight, indeed?
Hello, Miriam. Thanks for that great show. Welcome, everybody. This is my very first time sitting in Alex Armstrong's seat. We've got a fantastic show for you tonight, and we've got somebody new with us as well, because obviously someone had to take over from me. Christo, what have you got?
So, the UK is no longer a country of ambition or aspiration.
Yeah, too right. And from me, Nigel's day at Ascot proves that the left still don't understand the working class.
Labour are the party of death.
There ain't no black in the Union Jack. And you won't like it, but it's time to rejoin the European Union.
So we've got a great show. Now all I need to do is hand over to Sam Francis for the news and weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Today is the peak in the current heat wave, with hot air still in play across many areas of the UK. It's being dragged up a little bit from parts of continental Europe in a southerly winds, but we've also got low pressure out in the Atlantic driving weather fronts across the UK, and that's providing the perfect ingredients to spark off some severe thunderstorms this evening. Particularly across northern England, parts of southern Scotland, we could see some frequent lightning, large hail, strong and gusty winds, torrential downpours, and a warning is in place over the course of the forthcoming night. Some further sharp showers for Northern Ireland and western Scotland this evening and into the early hours of Sunday, but it'll be a fresher night to come here, around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but another warm and muggy night to come across eastern areas of England, in particular locally 20 degrees Celsius as we start off the day tomorrow. But despite a little bit of cloud that will take its time to eventually clear off, it is the southeast of England that will hold on to the best of the sunshine over the course of Sunday. Over towards the west, we'll start to see the cloud drifting in that little bit more, and there will be further showers pushing their way in at times for Scotland first thing in the morning. Again, they could be on the sharp and heavy side in places. We'll see those showers developing more widely throughout the day, spreading across Northern Ireland into parts of northern England and areas of Wales as well. Again, potential for those to be on the heavy side. Quite a breezy day overall, though that breeze may make it feel a touch more comfortable compared to the hot and humid days that we have had around of late. In amongst all of these showers in the northwest, temperatures now closer towards average for the time of year in the mid to high teens, but the heat is still holding on for a touch in the southeast, so 27-28 degrees possible in any of the sunnier spells that we have around. Those showers will continue into Sunday evening, and that sets us up for a fairly changeable week to come. There'll be further showers, potential for thunderstorms, some longer spells of rain at times, but it'll be less warm and fresher for all of us, though still certainly pleasant in any sunshine. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
But you weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5.